Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 79. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here on this Wednesday show. Dave, wrapping up here the Pittsburgh Steelers 2021 season. Mike Tomlin holding his press conference yesterday. Steelers signing players to future contracts, so definitely now has that offseason feel.
Yeah, we'll have I'm working on getting the Rule of 51 together at this point so we can give the people a nice salary cap update and kind of look ahead. But I tell you, more than anything, I think you're coming to the realization that this is going to be an off-season kind of like we haven't experienced in quite a while, and this will be an off-season that from a speculation prediction kind of standpoint, I think will be one of the hardest that we've had in quite a while, because obviously you got a quarterback situation there that you got to solve, and who knows what's going to happen. How the transition will go into effect with Colbert, who's going to have the pull in what areas there, and then not only that, this team's going to have a lot more salary cap space than what they normally do as far as percentages go, and probably a lot more needs on both sides of the football as well too. You got a couple of questions about maybe some possible extensions later on in the summer. We'll talk about maybe one of those a little bit later on in the show there, but this is going to be, once again, this is going to be an eventful offseason, and one from a prediction standpoint that will be, I think, tougher than most have been.
And though the offseason for Pittsburgh officially began Monday, on Tuesday kind of really felt like the first day of the offseason. I say that for two reasons. One, again, Mike Tomlin had his end-of-year wrap-up press conference, and two, the Steelers signed 12 players to reserve future contracts as they begin building out their offseason roster. So all 12 of these guys were on the Steelers practice squad at one point or the entirety of the 2021 season. I'll just read off the names here quickly. Defensive end Daniel Archibong, wide receiver Rico Bussey, defensive tackle Khalil Davis, offensive guard Nathan Gillum, offensive guard Malcolm Bridgeton, edge rusher Delonte Scott, kicker Sam Sloman, defensive back Lyndon Stevens, tight end Jace Sternberger, safety Donovan Steiner, long snapper Rex Sunahara, and wide receiver Tyler Vaughn. So again, all those players are on this team's practice squad or bounced on and off throughout the season. So no major surprises, no major names there. Some notable names not on that list, including guys like Terrell Edmunds and Anthony Miller, Carl Joseph, Chaz Green, John Simon. So as you mentioned on Twitter, Dave, some of those bigger name guys probably looking at least to see if there's a better opportunity for another team before maybe coming back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, some of those veteran guys there, the Carl Josephs, and heck, the John Simon. I mean, long in the tooth as it was on top of it, but and even Rashad Coward, I think, is kind of weighing his options out there and all. But is it a huge loss if those guys get away? Probably not. Could one or two of them possibly indeed circle back at a later date? Yeah, it's possible there. But I think the bulk of the younger kind of inexperienced guys, as you see every year for the most part, those guys that in the season on the practice squad usually circle back as futures guys, and that of course won't be it from now. From now until the draft. We could probably look for, I forget normally what the total is, but probably a good 8 to 10, if not more, futures guys will be added throughout the course of this thing. So at least more than anything, it gives us a pretty good, decent Rule of 51 to start working with here.
I know neither of us are really super familiar with the majority of the future players signed, but any name of those 12 that kind of stick out to you, someone that you have some curiosity to watch, assuming these guys make it to camp next year?
I think the Steiner kid is someone we don't really know a whole heck of a lot about. So I would say that kid's probably one of them.
Yeah, he's probably the top of my list, maybe just because I know him the most because he was, with the team as a UDFA after the 2021 draft, carried throughout all of camp, played the entire preseason. And so you have a more comfort in just knowing who he is. But he was a good tackler. He's got good size. He's physical. He wraps up well, not a super great athlete. And ball skills probably fairly limited, but just someone that could probably carve out that special teams role because he's a pretty reliable tackler, kind of in that Miles Killebrew mold.
And I would tell you another one that I don't know too terribly much about either that the Steelers have had circle back a couple times is this Nate Gilliam out of I think he came out of Wake Forest originally, but has he played any center at all?
I don't know his background incredibly well, but I believe he was just a guard and a good one at Wake Forest. But I don't think there's a center resume, at least in college.
Right. I didn't see anything in there, but some of the brief little bit of tape that I did watch made me want to watch a little bit more. I haven't got back around to it, but there is, could that kind of guy be a kind of a dark horse? Who knows? I mean, wasn't LeGlue? When was LeGlue added to this team?
During the offseason at some point last year, sometime winter.
Yeah. So, and what, he a futures guy?
Probably, I believe so.
So it just goes to show you that you never know about some of these guys, and there'll probably be one or two that end up sticking on through to the practice squad, and then Lord knows where it goes from there. But those would be two of the names I think that jump out to me of that list of 12.
And of those 12, the only two who played snaps for Pittsburgh this past season were Archibong and Scott. Neither guy super impressive, but both guys first exposure, first cup of coffee, so it's hard to make too many judgments, but those are two guys who at least have some NFL snaps under their belt. Bussy got some buzz in camp for a couple of good days. I thought it was a bit overrated, but he'll be back and see what he can do, assuming he makes it to camp in 2022.
Right.
All right, Dave, Mike Tomlin holding his end-of-year press conference yesterday, and it's always a more revealing one, I think, than the general week-to-week kind of stuff. So a lot to talk about for sure. I'm not even sure where to begin with this one. I think probably the best place to start is the news about the Steelers coordinators, and nothing set in stone yet. No official announcements have been made by the team, but my two takeaways from the coordinator aspect is that Matt Canada likely to return and Keith Butler unlikely to return, probably looking at retirement. Tomlin saying he was optimistic about Canada and the job he did in the future that he could do for this team, and said that Butler has talked to him about this year potentially being his last year. He said Tomlin and Butler have not spoken yet about really concrete plans, but hinting at a potential retirement for Keith Butler. So obviously the Canada news is going to get more of the headlines, and basically Mike Tomlin could have said he was a Browns fan, and I would have gotten the same reaction as fans had whenever Tomlin said that or implied that Canada will return next year.
Yeah, but look, we kind of threw it out there that it's quite possible that Canada wasn't going to just be one and done, that this thing could have gone either way with him, and mostly with the either way, him not returning maybe being by his own decision. I didn't have a strong feeling that this team would outright move on from him. And we talked the other day, what do we really know what his ceiling is? And you can kind of detect that, a few of the media people in the media with some of these exit interviews with players, and especially with Tomlin and all like that, wanting to know, did Matt Canada really get a chance to run, schematically some things that maybe are some of the core things that he likes to do defensively, with the mobile core. In other words, how much did what Ben could and could not do impacted, what Matt Canada may have, had ideas about possibly doing down the road here. But with that said, and we've mentioned several times, good offensive coordinator will take what he has and then build around it that way. Now that looks good printed out on a bumper sticker, I'm sure. But to a core, most offensive coordinators, I think, have some core identity to their scheme and all. And once again, have we seen the ceiling of what Matt Canada can do offensively? that's always a tricky question too, because the talent of players will certainly make offensive coordinators look a lot better, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen this on the defensive side of football for years as well too. But I'm not overly shocked. I know I realize that a lot of the fan base isn't happy about it,
right.
But and there is no finality to this just yet, I don't think. But it certainly does sound like, based on what Mike Tomlin said, that things are trending toward Matt Canada staying on as the offensive coordinator. And on the other side, I think you and I've kind of have kind of prepped the people pretty good that 2021 might be it for Keith Butler, and that he could possibly retire or get retired. and
full Arians, yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously Terrell Austin would probably be one of the likely people to take over from there. So I think we'll have some finality to this probably within the next couple of weeks by the time the team gets down to the Senior Bowl there.
Yeah. Usually all coaching decisions or at least in terms of who's staying and who's going, will be made by
January 14th for LeGlue last year.
Okay, that was whenever he got signed. So yeah, part of those fairly immediate future contract signings. But yeah, with Canada, again, nothing's set in stone. And if Rooney comes down hard and says, listen, we're making a change, then things can change. And so I don't want to assume this is locked in. I wish somebody would have just straight up asked Tomlin, is Canada returning next year? That's I think a pretty good question to ask. They kind of danced around it. What do you think about the job he did? They asked Butler, is Butler coming back? And they got an answer out of Tomlin that way, but they didn't do it with Canada for some reason. I don't want to absolve and say you can't evaluate OCs even when they're dealt pretty difficult hands the way that I thought Canada was this year. But I think it is tough to make any of those final judgment calls on him based on not even the mobility aspect. I don't take that into consideration as much. I don't think that's a core tenet of Canada's philosophy. He's worked with quarterbacks who are mobile, quarterbacks who aren't. He's bounced around so many places. He's kind of had to adapt to different people. But just all the newness of him being a first-year OC, brand new offensive line coach, all these rookies playing, and all the injuries, all that kind of stuff, obviously, made it probably a more difficult evaluation. And I think in that sense, you kind of give the guy a chance in year two, as hopefully you get a little more stability, a little more continuity, add some more talent. It's a little bit more maybe of Canada's vision in some other respects. Then I think you have a more clear and accurate evaluation. This is not to say that the offense was good this year. It was bad. Canada did not always do a good job. I certainly have criticisms of Matt Canada where there were clearly times this year where it felt like he was in over his head. I think from an overall schematic standpoint, he was too often one step behind that chess game when offensive guys especially should be one step ahead in that chess game because they're controlling the pace and the defense is reacting to what they're doing. So I thought some of those things were poor and need to be improved upon. But yeah, I'm not overly shocked by the news, and I'm not nearly as upset about the news as 95% of fans.
With the start of the games alone, from this season. Well, look, I mean, you can boil this down to a yards per play aspect. This team was worse in 2021 from a yards per play aspect than they were in 2020. So, the running game got a little bit better, but the passing game regressed. And just from a start of game aspect, the age old, scripted plays and fact finding missions and all like that. I'm in today's NFL. I think you need a little bit of that, obviously, to see, we're going to throw a couple of different formations out there to see what we get. And a lot of those, what I'm getting at is a lot of those should be more with attack mode in mind right out of shoot. In other words, let's just not run this one play out of this formation right out of shoot just because we just want to find out what the defense is going to do with that. I think right out of shoot, you ought to be prepared to say, we want to use this certain formation, this certain type of motion as a fact-finding mission, but be willing to attack to make an instant adjustment off of that, Yeah,
well, I think Canada did that. I didn't get the sense that he was not trying to score on opening drives.
I don't feel like I don't feel he had the notion. It just felt like they were going to go with what they were going to throw out there and the play they were going to run instead of trying to adjust off of what the defense was going was throwing out there against them in certain formations.
Is there any example? I'm just trying to think about that, because obviously you have your scripted plays, and so you're just kind of going off your script based on what you anticipate.
But off that script, you ought to be able to audible off some of that stuff, especially non RPO type stuff, which they ran a lot of RPO stuff, more so starting around week 4, I think, right around in there. But just use it more of we want to dictate the pace to the defense more than the defense dictate the early pace to us of how we adjust off of that.
Okay. Yeah, I would say and I'm still trying to think about it, and I probably want to go back through the tape again, look at some different games and things like that. But like I said, the self-scouting aspect of it, or your game plan of, there were so many times this year that the Steelers were running man beaters and they got zone. They ran about 4 or 5 return whip routes in that Chiefs game alone, which I assume were being called because they thought they were getting man coverage and they were getting zone so often. So that's probably my biggest criticism, is that you're running stuff, anticipating one coverage, and you're getting something different from the defense, and it's really hampering the odds of success for your offense. And you saw Deontay Johnson seemingly imply some of that stuff in his meeting with the media, I believe on Monday, saying that there were so many times where the offense wasn't getting what they wanted, and they weren't getting the looks they thought they were going to get. And he never said it directly, but that kind of implies that the play calls from Canada weren't proper against what the defense was actually doing. And so I think overall, some of that chess game stuff, like I mentioned, is probably my largest criticism of Matt Canada.
Well, look, you go back to was it the Green Bay game that you're running that mesh right into a zone, those kind of.
Yeah, because they had gotten man before, so that they would get it again, and they got zone. And that happened in the Titans game. They'd run something early in the game, they got man, they tried to run the same concept the next drive, they got zone. And so those, I think, are the bigger, concrete, tangible issues.
Well, look, you've got, part of the chess game is being able to change the move up in mid-flow. In other words, once the play calls, there has got to be more of an ability overall just for at the line of scrimmage to be able to check from one thing to the other. Now, obviously, there's a lot
Ben did that.
There's a lot of side adjustments that go on and a lot of stuff too, but just the ability pre-snap to probably make better adjustments goes into that.
Well, that's a Ben thing. I mean, that's, and I thought Ben, it felt like he generally had the freedom to do those things.
Right, but the court, maybe Ben didn't do it as well as he probably should have sometimes. It just doesn't stop at the offensive coordinator either. Look, there was a lot of drops along this way. They had not tried to defend Canada too much here, but you hit on it early. Four rookie players on this offense for most of the season, with one of them being a center that was, for lack of a better word, horrendous. Throughout the season there, and schematically, it just felt like everything was schemed around to get the ball out of Ben's hands fast, which that wasn't overly surprising.
Right.
But there just didn't say there were too many times of running stuff into stuff that they probably didn't expect, and makes you kind of wonder if maybe some more identification keys need to be done pre-snap.
Yeah, I think it's just when you make those play calls, you're assuming you're going to get one thing based on defensive tendencies, and it felt like they were wrong quite a bit. Sometimes they were right. There were some games that were I think the end of the Titans game or maybe Browns game, you got some good schemes and some good counters and things like that. But I just think in a word, this offense with all the talent and personnel is very limited, and that kind of really hamstrings you as an OC. And Tomlin seemed to say as much with his when you have red paint the barn red kind of comment, would seem to say the personnel wasn't very good and we couldn't really do a whole lot with it. And that was kind of the general vibe I got from his answer.
Well,
there.
That's exactly the vibe I got from that. That's him deflecting from the offensive coordinator at that point. All we had is red paint, so had to paint the barn with it that way, meaning that he didn't have a lot to work with. Well, whose fault is that?
Yeah, no, that's Tomlin and Colbert.
You're only as good as, you can have a fantastic play caller, but you can't put me and you out there and expect to have success with it.
I think you could run a couple routes.
No. I could block maybe, but
okay.
I could block down.
You want to play center inside for the Steelers next year?
No,
you might be overqualified.
I wouldn't even do half as good as Kendrick Green, but look, in today's NFL, you obviously got to be able to move the football and got to be able to score, especially against certain teams. We talked about that the other day, right? If this team's going to not only get to the playoffs moving forward, but actually win a playoff game, you're going to have to compete against the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, and now maybe the Cincinnati Bengals. These teams that can put up the 27 or more points against you, and to some degree, obviously, your defense has to help in on that. But I mean, how many years now have we gone where this defense struggles to score points, and you can't even come out to shoot early in games and get on the board? You just kind of, the last couple seasons have been boiled down to, man, get this football game into the fourth quarter, and let's go empty, and let's see what we can draw up in the sand, if you will, and push the football down the field against some prevent defenses to overcome a 2 or 3 possession game. And that's the issues. And look, I mean, explosive plays. There's just no explosive. This team had 50, I think, total explosive plays for this season, and 51, and if you include the playoffs, woohoo! And I mean, if you boil that down, that's an average of less than 3 explosive plays a game. And in today's NFL, that's just not going to work, and not going to work also on a continual basis is the throw short, run long. All that wasn't an excuse for is Ben doesn't have the ability to escape pressure anymore. We can't let him sit back there and expect him to extend plays to throw the football down the field. That's all that was there. So until whatever you do offensively opens up the ability to push the football down the field more often and get explosive plays that way, have quarterbacks be able to get you an explosive play or two, maybe in a game with his feet. You're not gonna have any change here, because the NFL is not built overall for teams to continually put together 13 play drives down the field to score touchdowns. End of story there. So, I mean, yeah, there's not a lot of confidence in all that Matt Canada can accomplish this, but and you would think even less so with a rookie quarterback, right?
Potentially. I mean, there's going to be pros and cons who that rookie is, what his makeup is. We've seen some rookies come in and have great success, so I don't want to, cast or paint with a broad brush to kind of stay with the art terms here.
Who's been the most impressive rookie quarterback maybe in the last 2 years?
I mean, Justin Herbert, I think.
Okay, but how he kind of went the other way, right? This year, kind of backslid a little bit to some degree.
A little bit, but I would take him in a Steelers uniform.
Sure. At this point, you would, with 2 years experience underneath him. Absolutely, you would.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's still playing really good ball. I think the arm talent's incredible with Herbert. And so maybe he came back a little bit. There was a new OC. They had a different system. They didn't push the ball downfield a lot. So I think maybe some coaching issues there. But yeah, we've seen rookies come in and play. Well, it's a mixed bag. I just want to be careful and not say that a rookie quarterback's automatically going to stink. I mean, they could have different skill sets and different, they're going to have their struggles, obviously, and there's just pros and cons there. But yeah, and listen,
I think even if you got to, what I'm saying is I think it's a lot to expect to have a high volume of success with a rookie right out shoot. Even Mac Jones we saw at different times throughout this year limitations with him. Got into the playoffs and got into a situation where he had to score points and they couldn't do it with him.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. And will he become that guy? Even look at Joe Burrow back at his rookie season. That wasn't a great rookie season in the limited amount of games that he played in. He looked like a rookie at times. Now you throw in a guy that stretched, he got that experience out of the chute there. Obviously they wish they would have got, another whatever game, 5, 6, 7 games out of him before he had that knee injury there. But, you move him on into a second year, you give him a vertical talent, you give him some semblance of an offensive line, you get a defense that can at least, get off the field in third down situations there, and that's why you've got the Bengals where they're at right now. But what I'm getting at is if year 2 is the end all measuring stick for Matt Canada. I think people are going to be a little disappointed if it's a rookie quarterback handling most of it in that system.
Sure, I think you have to be careful not to continually make excuses for Canada and say, "Oh, next year there was a new quarterback, be it veteran or rookie, and this happened and that happened, and so you got to give him another year." I mean, you have to be careful of those things.
That's what I'm getting at here. You know what's going to be the narrative, assuming he stays this year, and you had a rookie quarterback play 75% of the games, at quarterback, and obviously the quarterback's going to go through his growing pains and all. Are you going to be at the same time?
Sure.
Are you going to be at the same point next year saying, well, here's why they're sticking with Matt Canada one more year. It's because had two more different offensive linemen.
Right.
These first year players were just second year players, and you had a rookie. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. No, I get that.
I mean, that's the dangers of taking a young OC at this point. Inexperienced OC with no success, and then throwing a rookie quarterback in with him.
Yeah, or even a veteran. It could be a veteran that has to learn the system, and you're figuring out how they operate. I mean, any newness is at that position is going to create some strain and growing pains and probably some limitations for your offense early on, the way it did this year. So, yeah, I understand that point entirely. And listen, I was getting more and more frustrated with this offense. 9 points in the last 9 first quarters, completely unacceptable. They could not run a boot to save their life and get free yards. I mean, I'm going to put a compilation of all the boots and rollouts they had run the last 3-4 weeks that just were totally figured out by the defense, and forced Ben to go to second reads and throw the ball away, get under pressure, get hit. Just some really, again, schematic issues based on what you think you're getting versus what you're actually getting are two different things, and that really hampers his offense. So there are plenty of criticisms of Matt Canada, but I just know big picture overall, this team had low expectations for the offense this year. They knew the growing pains, and they knew the situation they were in. And I think, it's understandable to at least want to give that a second year when there's a little bit more maybe stability and hopefully some more talent with some other positions and offensive line in particular that grows and gets better.
I'll tell you what, if you do, if the decision is to keep Matt Canada, you're not, it was already a no, not going to probably happen anyway, but you're not going to have an Aaron Rodgers or a Russell Wilson or a Matt Ryan come into town and then start working with a second year offensive coordinator. That just, to me, that just doesn't add up.
Well, I mean, if Rodgers, but I think would want to come to Pittsburgh. I don't think a second year OC.
Rodgers would be the offensive coordinator.
I mean, yeah, that's also probably true. But yeah, I think
Russell Wilson would be the offensive coordinator if Matt Canada was still there. It's just, to me, it's just a kind of a different kind of oil and vinegar type thing there. I think part of the reason this team will ultimately decide to stay with Matt Canada is the fact that he will have kind of more seniority experience over who kind of the next quarterback will be, whether that be Mason Rudolph, whether it be Dwayne Haskins, whether it be a lesser experienced outside veteran being brought in, or a rookie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and listen, again, not to excuse or absolve Canada, but first year OC, I mean, second year in the NFL, that there's some growing pains there as well. And so you would hope and you would think Canada would be better and more comfortable as OC heading into next year. And that should, in theory, produce some better results.
I mean, I guess. I mean, look, I don't know what your expectations are already. I mean, a lot of things are going to change here real quickly. In fact, we're less than 2 months away from the start of the new league year already. The NFL puts out that calendar every year, important dates, and I think I sent that on to you guys and all like that. And this year I printed it out and put it on the refrigerator for the wife, and she said the other day, "Oh, it just don't stop." It's
nope.
Just one thing right after the other. I said, yeah, ain't it great? And, here we are, less than 2 months away from the start of the new league year. So this thing will move fast and all, but, and there are obviously going to be some changes, especially on the offensive side of football, but there is going to be a lot of carryover, I think, on the offensive side of football as well, too. Just from where I sit right now, I mean, I guess you could say, well, this offense has nowhere to go but down. Well, actually, they do have a little bit of a way to go down at this point, but that's because they didn't make that much more improvements up right now. So just looking at this thing right now, my expectations are kind of low for this offense other than the fact that I would expect it to be better than what we saw this past year. But more than anything, the things I'll be looking for is can this team run the football more effectively? Can they have more explosive plays? And can they score touchdowns early in games?
Yeah, I think that's all well said. Red zone offense needs to be better. It took a step back this year. And so, again, this is not going to be a popular conversation we're having right now. And I understand the pushback on Canada, and I certainly welcome emails and as specific explanations as possible for why people want Canada fired beyond just run, pass, or predictable, or, get into the nitty gritty. And we can certainly have that conversation. And I have plenty of criticisms of Canada. His reputation from people who kind of know him, it's not very good. I did not like listening to his press conferences on Thursday. So I got not a ton of love for the guy, but you want to be fair to him as well.
He's a lot more standoffish. He's 20 times more standoffish than a Randy Fichtner was. Speaking of Randy Fichtner, what if someone was became a new Steelers fan yesterday, all right, and they want to know, well, what did you see different in Matt Canada's offense schematically, maybe on a play-by-play basis than you saw with Randy Fichtner's offense? What would your answer to that be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest mark comes in the passing game because generally the structure is the O-line coach kind of handles the run game a bit more. I would say more rollouts, more boots, more of that aspect of it. Certainly a heavier emphasis on RPOs, which I don't know is even like Canada's thing, but it kind of felt like the best thing for this offense for a time, and it kind of extended for most of the season. So I would say the two biggest differences are the rollouts and the boots in an RPO heavy offense.
All right. And how many true boots did we kind of see?
A ton. I mean, like half rolls and boots and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of them.
All right. Versus Fichtner the year before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't do it that much under Fichtner. They do it a ton under Canada. They're doing that day one in camp.
All right. Off the top of your head, what are you quantifying as a ton? Because I didn't get that sense.
Like multiple a game, like 3 to 4 a game.
All right, that would be kind of described as an out of pocket kind of. I mean, let me vamp for a little bit here so I can situationally pull some stats here.
Yeah, if you can pull it. I mean, I don't have the data, but I mean, they were doing it day one in camp. I mean, there was a lot of boot. And it's not necessarily like the nakeds where like you're threatening to run, but like, half roll into the flat and throw to the tight end, or maybe hit the comeback, or, they hit it to Deontay in the Chiefs game, which was because Freiermuth was taken away in the right flat. So Ben had to go back to Deontay, and luckily he found them. But there were issues with those boots again. At the end of the year, they were just struggling to even get some of those 3 yards where I felt like the flat was never an option, and you're supposed to just hit that quick and get 4 or 5 yards on first down. And they really couldn't do that. All
right. Would you quantify that as a design rollout left, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you would quantify that as in pocket? No.
Probably not. Yeah. Not in pocket. No.
All right.
Out of pocket.
Let me see if I can drill this down real quick to the Steelers here.
When you said out of pocket, I thought you were doing a kid meme, because that's a phrase that the kids like to say, out of pocket, and you kind of had me confused for a second.
Oh no, out of pocket's actually an older term. I'll be out of pocket for a while. Well, at least my understanding of out of pocket is I'll be unreachable.
Okay, I think there's a different. I think it means something different today. It's not. It's okay to say out loud, but I think out of pocket, to my very nerdy understanding, means like, you're crazy. Like that's a crazy thing to say, or you're being wild or something like that.
Oh, okay. So people would describe me as the kids probably describe me as being out of pocket, huh?
I don't know if that's what they would use, but you get the gist of it. I think you have an understanding of the newfangled kid language.
Okay, out of pocket to me means if I told somebody I'm going to be out of pocket, that means I'm going to be busy with something, unreachable.
It doesn't mean that anymore.
It doesn't mean that anymore?
No, I'm sorry
Lord. Okay, I'm getting these things are kind of, so I got to be. I got to be careful when I use that when talking anymore. So some of the things that used to mean one thing don't mean that anymore. And I didn't know what cap meant for a while. I thought cap was like the salary cap or a cap that you wear on the head.
Yeah, it means lie.
But that evidently cap don't even mean cap no more. All right, I'm looking at this Sports Info solutions here. 27 dropbacks that fit that criteria in the passing game of out of pocket or design rollout left right are checked, and in pocket no is checked. And there are 27. If you add in Chris Boswell,
let's not do that,
and Mason Rudolph, you get to 30.
Well, how many with Ben? I mean, so 29 with Mason and Ben.
Right, 29 with Mason and Ben. I guess the next question you're going to have is what happened the year before.
Yeah, it still feels low. I mean, again, it depends on exact definitions, but I feel like there was more than that.
All right, they have the year before a total of 8 between Roethlisberger and Dobbs.
Yeah, so I mean, you're seeing a jump there, and
so 3 times, 4 times,
a little bit more than that, almost 4 times. Yeah, 3.5 times more. But even that 29 felt 29 felt a little bit low because it might have. I don't know. It depends on some of the definitions. Could there have been a quick rollout there? Technically, he's still inside the tackle, maybe something like that, but. Certainly, you felt that even from training camp, you kind of felt the emphasis on the rolls and the boots. And obviously, if you had a more mobile quarterback as well, you probably see that stuff more often.
All right. So what other you mentioned that what other differences would you say? Now, look, RPO is right, but we both agree. And I mean, I said this, back in about week 3 or what, that this team probably needs to do more of RPOs until they can kind of get a better grasp of things. Now, does that mean that you run RPOs 90% of the time? They can never graduate away from the RPOs is a lot of the issue there. But I mean, this team did run a lot of RPOs with Randy. Now, they probably ran a higher percentage of them this past year with Matt Canada.
Yeah, I did. Does SIS have any numbers on that? Do they quantify RPOs?
I believe they do. I just got off of there real quick. Let me reset this real quick.
Because there was obviously an extremely high number of those. That was a base component of the offense this year, right or wrong.
I mean, they've got. I would have to add these together because they have them by offense. I mean, by rushing and passing.
Don't worry about it then. I think it's fair to say there was a lot. And then, I mean, some other stuff too. I thought there was some more bunch spacing concepts, a lot of 3x1 nub. So you get trips receiver to the 3 receiver side, then the tight end usually fired with backside as the nub tight end. That was new. So there's some formational stuff. Obviously, the motion probably wasn't run as effectively and as often as Canada would have liked. That's some of the paint the barn red comments that Tomlin made. But you saw an attempt to try to use more motion.
Okay. But to a core, it's not every offensive coordinator runs the same thing to some degree. All right. Now, obviously, some put other wrinkles and all like that. And a lot of what good offensive coordinator, we've talked about this several times, is being able to build off of things and make a lot of things look like one thing where in turn you do 6 different things off of that. And we never really, Matt Canada has yet to master anything close to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, from a foundational level, they couldn't execute some of the basic stuff. So it's hard to build off and have layers and constraint plays whenever you just kind of can't get the basics down. And again, the common thread being the quarterback being the same probably also has a limitation on, there's some more carryover there from old to new because your quarterback is the same.
How much do you think Ben dictated?
In terms of like, just the game plan, or
period on. I mean, it still felt like Ben really had a heavy hand in kind of probably what was going on, and due to a lot because of some of his limitations too.
Yeah,
and Ben likes what he likes too, and that became. It's been predictable over the years, with especially the last 4 years or so, when it comes to Ben with what he likes when he goes down the field.
Yeah, I think that Ben's still had a role. I think that kind of grew as the season went along, and he had a bit more autonomy not because of him, but because as the young guys got more experience and a little more comfortable, then they kind of opened up the offense from a no huddle and changing the play standpoint. I don't think he had the autonomy that he had under Fichtner. Those guys were super close, knew each other so well, and Fichtner gave Ben basically as much freedom as any quarterback in football. I don't think it existed to that extent under Canada, but I think maybe Ben's autonomy grew a bit as the season went along, especially in no huddle.
All right or wrong decision to bring him back? I mean, time will tell. I mean, it's not ours to call, but I'm not. Let's end the conversation this way. I'm not shocked that he's probably going to get another year.
Yeah, me neither. I understand it. I'm not like fully endorsing it, saying, man, this is a great decision by the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's going to pay off handsomely. I'm not trying to say that. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not. I didn't come with the pitchforks and axes the way that most fans are.
Oh, I mean, fans do that every year.
Yeah,
3 games into the season, fire everybody. All right. Where to? I mean, the Butler news, not surprising. I mean, I had a feeling we'd get strung up on this for 30 minutes, talk about the offensive coordinator, but there was a lot more that Mike Tomlin had to say too.
Yeah, Dave, not to stick with quarterback talk too much longer because we have an entire offseason to discuss it, but there certainly needs to be an eye on the future of the position. And basically, Tomlin literally said, quote, all options are on the table, said that Rudolph and Haskins will have an opportunity to compete, but there still could be and probably will be competition. So it's very wide open, as it should be for a team needing to find its quarterback for the first time in 18 years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Get busy turning over those stones that they were turning quite a bit over throughout the season there. Not shocking there, and he also didn't want to paint himself into a corner. I think some of the comments were thrown at him. There's been reports out there that that you don't want to start over with a rookie quarterback, and he really would be painting himself in the corner if he'd said, "Oh, that's true." I wouldn't expect him to cop to that, even if it was true. Would you?
No, he's not going to make those kind of declarations. And as you said, I think on Monday's show, this team probably doesn't exactly know its path for a quarterback right now, especially Tomlin, who just got out of in-season mode. Maybe Colbert has a better idea looking at the landscape of things, but this team's got a lot to discuss.
I think one thing that we do know that what Tomlin wants in a quarterback, whoever it is, and that's something that he's talked about all season. That's mobility, and he gave a real good money shot quote again on Tuesday when talking about that. And if there's one thing that Mike Tomlin did not lie about during his Tuesday press conference, it was that. And here's the exact quote real quick here. It was, "Man, quarterback mobility is valued not only by me, but everyone. It's just a component of today's game and increasingly so." I mean, how would that look on a t-shirt?
Yeah, now granted, he was asked a question. He didn't voluntarily offer that opinion, but still, Tomlin all year long has talked about quarterback mobility. I remember during the bye week, they asked Tomlin, "How'd you spend your bye week?" He was like, "I watched mobile quarterbacks and saw their effect on red zone play and just, on an overall offense." So every single sign from Tomlin has been wanting and hoping to get a more mobile quarterback next year. Now, that bar is very low because Ben was among the least mobile quarterbacks in football, but you would think the next Steelers quarterback is going to have a functional level of mobility.
Define that for me, please, sir.
Well, I guess on your scale of 1 to 10, it's probably someone at least in that 5 to average range, but somebody who can execute some of those boots and rollouts and scramble to keep a play alive and occasionally get something with his legs whenever it's not there. So it's not Lamar Jackson, it's not Kyler Murray, but it's someone who can run some of those boots and those rollouts. Again, keep plays alive with his legs whenever things break down. Just use that as an escape hatch. That's going to be so helpful for a new quarterback or not a super talented quarterback or a rookie quarterback, that whenever things kind of break down, when they inevitably will, that you can use your legs as that kind of bailout mechanism to salvage a play.
I remember going scouting other teams this year ahead of games that the Steelers would play, and you talk about Herbert, one of those guys. And look, that guy's not going to win any many 40-yard dashes against some players, I don't think. But what is one of the things that I know I noted, I think you guys noted in the scouting reports as well too. You got to be cognizant of that guy taking off with the football when it wasn't there, and lo and behold, he did that a few times in that game this year against the Steelers and burned them pretty good on that. And how many times do you think defensive coordinators prepare for the Pittsburgh Steelers these last couple of years said, look, you got to be cognizant of rush lanes and this guy will take off with the football on you.
I remember watching the Chiefs Broncos game week 18 before the wild card game, and I was seeing Drew Lock with all these runs, and I think he had 2 touchdown runs in that game, and I almost began to write my notes. The Chiefs don't contain well. Then I went, it doesn't matter because Ben's not going to make those plays, so throw that out the window. So yeah, you're right. It's an aspect that you lose.
So is it the 5 that you're looking for? I think we'd both agree that Burrow's not Lamar Jackson, not anywhere close to him. In fact, who has better mobility, Baker Mayfield or Joe Burrow?
It was tougher to evaluate Baker this year because he was kind of in the pocket more with a shoulder injury. I think Baker's a better athlete. What's that?
Gut.
I think in terms of like who's the better athlete, it's Baker. I think Burrow's been more impressive, kind of scrambling to keep plays alive.
Okay, I would agree that my first thought would be Baker, just on a plain mobility. Dave, who do you think is more mobile? I would put Baker ahead of Burrow.
Agreed.
So I guess the question becomes is what level of mobility does Mike Tomlin consider mobile?
Yeah, and again, the bar might be low in his mind just because any quarterback who can kind of move. I mean, he probably saw that Mason Rudolph 26-yard run and went, good enough for me. You're mobile, Mason. Counts.
Probably wanted to give Mason a 99 Madden score in the mobility department after seeing that one.
Right. He became so mobile, he became fungible. That's how mobile Mason Rudolph was. 3rd-round guy, right?
Look, yeah. I mean, I'm not advocating it by any stretch of imagination, but man, this team surprisingly surprisingly and not surprisingly, Joshua Dobbs is just a great kid, and just from an X's and O's standpoint, that kid could probably be the next Byron Leftwich, if you will, that way of it there. But he still got some mobility to him too, and makes you he's more of that college mobile quarterback. I don't know, kind of like a Matt. I don't want to label Matt Corral just yet because I haven't completely done watching his tape, but probably to that degree of a quarterback that can take off and do some things with it. Look, if Joshua Dobbs is on the field, you got to worry about that kid taking off with the football. Right?
Right. Yeah, that's the escape hatch where, like, when things break down, Dobbs can run. That's why he's so good in the preseason when he's playing with new guys and young guys, because he can just run and rip off 20 yards and make those kind of plays.
Now, and I'm sure that's going to get thrown as Dave thinks Joshua Dobbs should be the starting quarterback of the Steelers. I'm just saying, I mean, they've kept him around all this time. You would think that there's probably a decent chance that they'd resign him to another 1-year minimum contract and allow him to, to compete for a backup job.
Yeah, you're going to have 4 quarterbacks in camp next year, as they always do. It's almost certainly going to be Mason. Haskins will get the original round tender, and I think they bring Dobbs back. And then the 4th guy, and that's, is that a veteran ad? Is that a draft ad? That becomes the open and probably the most important question of the position this offseason. But yeah, Dobbs was valuable for, that's mobility, but a great coach. I mean, he was on the sidelines all year with Ben. Anytime they would show Ben on the sidelines, it's Mike Sullivan and it's Josh Dobbs. And so that was a great football IQ thing. Dobbs has talked about. He would suggest play sometimes and they would work occasionally. So yeah, Dobbs' presence in his football mind was extremely valuable, I'm sure.
And I guess you can go ahead and take your markers out, kids, and scratch through Carson Strong, because even if his, there was talk that his knee hasn't, his knee needed more time to heal, and that he's more mobile than what we've seen on tape the last 2 years. But even if he's more mobile than he's been on tape the last 2 years, just having a hard time envisioning him being much more mobile than what he showed on tape this year. So to me, Carson Strong is the best all around quarterback from what I've seen so far in this draft class, from the X and O's, arm strength, make all the throws type standpoint. But man, if there's one part of his Madden score that's missing, it's the mobility factor. And so with that, I would be very, very surprised if Carson Strong is kind of in the wheelhouse of what they would be looking for.
Yeah, that's probably fair. And then you factor in the knee injuries. I know there's been some doctors that have cleared him. So even if he is cleared medically, you wonder 5-10 years what those knees are going to look like. You saw what happened to Ben. So, I don't want to take guys off the board here on January 19th, but doesn't fit what Tomlin's talking about. But again, at the same time, I don't want to get so focused in on one aspect of a guy that you miss other potential good talent just because they don't maybe fit your ideal mobility quota.
All right. What else did Mike Tomlin have to say?
Let's flip to the defensive side of the football.
Do you have anything else to add on the mobility topic?
No, not right now. We'll have a ton of time to talk about that. And I don't have any other really interesting thoughts on the subject right now. Mike Tomlin talked about defensively, Terrell Edmonds, about the odds of him coming back. The team declined the fifth-year option on him, and it usually does not mean that those guys are going to come back to Pittsburgh when their free agency period begins. But Tomlin didn't talk about his play too much, talked about his availability more than anything else. He said, quote, "I think the first thing you think about when you think about Terrell Edmonds is availability, and I never want to underscore that. This is a guy that's been ridiculously available to us, not only this year, but over the course of his career," which he's right about. Edmonds has missed one game in his 4-year career.
And it was COVID, wasn't it, or no? Or was it COVID or no?
He battled a shoulder injury at the end of last year. I think he sat out the finale last year, I want to say. Don't quote me. He missed the game last year. I believe it was the finale. I don't know if that was COVID or a shoulder. He had a shoulder injury, though. But, this guy got thrown to the fire on day one because the team had signed Morgan Burnett and planned for him to be the guy. He gets hurt early in the season, and Edmonds kind of assumes that role and never gives it up. And so for all his warts, this is a guy that's highly conditioned, a guy that's highly available, and has played about as much football as you can for a guy's first 4 seasons.
I mean, I think we prepped the people pretty good for that, right? I mean, people won't. This will be another one of those, and I'm not going to say it is, but it sure sounds like Mike Tomlin saying, "Man, if we can get this guy back, that wouldn't hurt my feelings at all." And I still think, as we've said for weeks now, that don't be surprised if this team re-signs Terrell Edmonds, because they have so many holes that they're going to be working on filling, and this team usually likes to re-sign as many of their own as they can. If you got this guy re-signed to a 2 or 3 year deal at a more than medium value for the position, I think you could do worse there. So don't be shocked if they re-sign him is all.
Yeah, I'm not going to make declarations this year like I did last year and look dumb like I did last year, but I would not be surprised by it, and I would be more than okay with bringing Edmonds back on what's that contract going to look like? 2 years, $9.5 million, kind of a banner-like deal, sort of.
Let's look real quick at what the safety position looks like in the market here.
It's usually a more depressed market. It might be heating up a bit. And obviously there's Minka to pay, and that's going to start resetting the market some more. But obviously Edmonds is not getting Minka money.
I mean, you look on down the list at around number 20 ranked or 20 highest paid safety. I mean, you're at least 6 million mark right around in there. So, but they wouldn't pick up his option, right? At close to around that amount. Maybe that's because they didn't want to guarantee. Look, I don't think if they do re-sign him, I don't think it'll be a 1 year deal anyway. I think you'd be looking at a 2 year deal to maybe put around. You might try to do a deal where it puts around 8 or 9 million in his pocket in 2022, but maybe with an average yearly value of around 6 million. You get my drift there. You're
front loading it, right?
Just slightly. I mean, if it's going to be a 2 year deal, which I would think that Edmonds wouldn't want to lock himself up too terribly long if he, that way he can maybe show something in these next 2 years and maybe get another bite of the apple there. So I don't know what immediately jumps in my head. People will scream at and say there's no way. but 2 years, 12 to 13 million,
Okay.
right around in there. Now, all it takes is one team to think otherwise there. And once again, am I undervaluing the safety position? People say that if Edmonds thinks he can go out and get $9 million new money average, go get it. They'd be glad to get rid of him in that aspect. But you're going to have to pay for that experience to some degree there. And they did not pick up his fifth-year option, which was pretty telling. But I don't. What
was that fifth-year option amount? Do you remember what the number was?
I want to say it was around $6 million, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I thought it was because I know they changed it a little bit now based on your career and some of those, escalators that you hit, so it can float a little bit.
Hold on, I'll pull that number for you.
Okay, I thought it was a bit higher, but I could be wrong about it. I just remember me being wrong that they didn't pick it up at all. But yeah, again, he's played some solid football. The upsides, I think he's pretty much maxed out. I believe he's at a ceiling. The ball skills have improved slightly, but not dramatically. There are
6.753.
Okay, so 6.7. So yeah, 2 years, 12 million, 11 and a half, something like that.
I think that could be what you're looking at potentially.
Yeah, and I would be okay with that because, again, if you don't re-sign Edmonds, okay, I get that, but there are no internal options to replace him. So how are you replacing him out of house? Are you going to bring in another free agent and pay similar money and hope to get similar play? Are you going to invest draft capital in that when there's so many other needs for this team? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Right. Don't be shocked is all we're saying, right?
Right. What else from Tomlin? And let me ask you about Edmonds real quick. Do you believe he's at a ceiling? Do you think there's any more growth, really strong, tangible growth in his game?
I think he is what he is at this point. Really. I think we've seen his best and his worst.
Fair enough. What else from Mike Tomlin? Did mention no significant offseason injuries are expected, which is very good news for a team heading into an offseason. There could be minor stuff and things always change, of course, but looks pretty good on that front.
Yeah, I my takeaway by parsing that exactly and having lived through this several times during the offseason is no major surgeries. So, ACLs, stuff that very, very long term. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be any of these guys that maybe need to get something, fixed or something. So we could hear about that as the offseason goes. But for the most part, as opposed to other seasons, I think this team looks fairly healthy coming out of it. And as Thomas said, most of the more serious stuff has been already taken care of at this point.
Dave, one of the big focuses this offseason will be and should be on the Steelers' offensive line. And Mike Tomlin was asked about the center position and J.C. Hassenauer and Kendrick Green's, current and future play, and basically left all those things open-ended. It acknowledged, and it's obvious based on how they played him, but that Hassenauer was their best option at center late in the season. He did say, quote about Kendrick Green, I am optimistic that KG has position flexibility. That's one of the reasons why he was attractive to us, but I'm not ready to lay the center work to bed either. So it is still open-ended on Green's future position with this team.
Translate that for me. Put that through the Mike Tomlin contextualization translator.
This one's trickier. It kind of feels like his role will be based on what we can do in the offseason, based on who becomes available to us and what other moves we make. So what else his team does might dictate what home Green has in 2022.
At least the truth serum worked at the beginning of his answer there. In so many words, Kendrick Green got benched late in the season because J.C. Hassenauer was the better option.
Yeah. But that much is obvious. They played Hassenauer, so of course they thought he was the better option.
Right. He tried to hide behind a calf injury at first,
Yeah, but by the playoff game, Green was healthy and back, and so at that point that was moot.
But he did try to formulate some excuses in there, saying COVID and calf, by the end of the season, by the playoff game, and look, JC's not going to get any. He did not get snubbed in the Pro Bowl in the All Pro voting. JC there, so look, people said you guys are too hard on Case, on Kendrick Green, yada yada. We nailed this one, and almost right from the start as well too. So all I have to say about this is, man, they better address the center position somehow, some way during the offseason. Period. I don't know if that's another draft pick, Lindenbaum. I don't know. A veteran, free agent, I don't know. But they have got it. That player cannot be Hassenauer or Green. Period. And as far as what you want to do with Green right now, go ahead and move him to guard. But good luck with that.
If you're going to address center, you probably do it with a pretty big swing and not kind of a dribbler up the middle, right? Because if you just kind of add in a veteran guy who's maybe a little bit better than Green and Hassenauer, but not significantly so, then you don't have a clear option there. So if you're going to go big at center, or if you're going to address the center, you probably should go big at it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the question is, what do you do at right guard, right tackle, where there could be obviously other holes as well? Now you could kick Green at right guard and see how that goes, or have him at left guard, move Dotson to right guard. But if you're going to move Green to guard, you have to put him back at his more familiar guard spot. That would be left guard. And in doing so, you would move Dotson back to his rightful home of right guard, where he played 55 games at Louisiana Lafayette that way. If indeed that was your plan to do so, at least that's what I would do out of shoot. Now, do I have my doubts that Green can survive in the NFL at left guard? Absolutely at this point, but you don't have it. You have to at least try that now, because you got the draft pick and all involved in it. But you don't let that stick just for the sake of, well, we got to save the draft pick here. Either he can play left guard at a better level than he played center at as a rookie, or he can't. End of story. But if indeed you are going to move him to guard, to me, there's no way around. You have to put him at left guard, where he has his most experience, to me. That makes sense. Yeah, I get that. The question is, though, do you go into the offseason assuming that he's your guy, or do you look to add a left guard too? I mean, how do you juggle that?
Man, you got, once again, this goes back to what we said. This team's going to have a lot of holes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't fill all of them. Yeah. I think at some point you have to wonder. You address whatever you address during the draft. In other words, you're not going to go into the draft and get both a center and a guard, I don't think.
Sure. I'm saying, but free agency could be a path, and because you have some money to play with. So it could be, I think you can add more than one guy in this offseason process.
Right. I think you're more likely to address the center position in the draft, and maybe a different guard option during free agency.
Okay. Or just to play devil's advocate, do you go with a center in free agency as opposed to asking another rookie to step in and play center with a new quarterback and all that newness? And not that the rookie center might have less growing pains than Green, but could still have growing pains.
Yeah, but if you get a pedigree, and I mean, we see what Creed was able to come in the NFL and do. So
sure. Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, just bouncing around ideas. And listen, this team got a left tackle and a center on day 2 and day 3 in this draft. So, I mean, in theory, you could get multiple offensive linemen. The results could be middling, but yeah, it's so.
If you want to open up this running game as well, too, I think you don't need the Trey Turners in here, and you need to be able to run some more outside zone in this. You need to take some age off that offensive line. And in doing so, that means no Turner. So if you're going to go out and add a free agent, either a center or guard, what I'm getting at is no 30-year-old center or guard.
Yeah. Well, Turner's not that old. He's 28.
Yeah, but he's pretty weathered though too.
Yeah, he's got some. They just need more talent. I mean, they just need to kind of. They can't just keep running back the same groups and expect different results. It's kind of where I'm at. And Turner's not going to get better as he gets later in his career. So I'm with you there. So in your kind of mind, you take a big swing at center. Let's assume that comes through the draft. You move Green to left guard, Dotson to right guard, and then draft or free agency a right tackle?
Well, I mean, I think there's a conversation to be had whether or not this team will want to re-sign a core for it, to be honest with you.
He wasn't terrible, but man, if you want to get really better as an offensive line, again, you just can't keep bringing these guys back and kind of hoping that slight development tweaks, and a core for kind of is who he is at this point.
Well, I think there's going to be I'm not condoning it, but don't be shocked.
Is he a good run blocker? He's not a good run blocker, and you want to get better running the football. And in pass pro, I think he was kind of shaky, actually.
I won't be surprised if they re-sign him, is all I'm saying, because I think, once again, you're going back to draft capital versus what this team needs and all like that. So many damn holes and all. I mean, are they going to really go back in and draft spend another 2 early round selections on offensive linemen? What's the likelihood
if that's
of
what
that
it
happening?
takes, man? That's what it takes. I mean, they knew how bad they were in the trenches this year, and they just can't make tweaks around the edges and expect big results.
Okay,
I think it's a risky
and you're
game.
also going to draft a quarterback early. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying if they were, I mean, there's not enough picks to go around.
Yeah, well, again, that's where free agency comes into play as well. I know offensive linemen, they're tough to find on the market. There's a definitely big tax to be paid for that. But look at the Chiefs. The Chiefs did not solely build through the draft. They had 2 linemen come through the draft with Humphrey and Smith. They traded for Orlando Brown, and they signed Joe Thuney. And I think people forget about the Thuney signing because that was a big deal at the time. And so they explored literally every avenue you can explore. They did draft, trade, and free agency. And so Pittsburgh has to take a similar approach if they really, truly want to transform their offensive line in a short amount of time.
Well, here's the thing, though, Alex. Adding Joe Haig as a tackle in free agency does not qualify as adding a tackle in free agency. Either you're going to add a tackle via free agency or you're not. And by that, I mean you better be prepared to. The good tackles are not cheap. Right or left, all right?
No, I don't disagree.
So to me, they basically have 2 options here, because I think I'll be surprised if this team takes a tackle early in the draft again. All right. So I'm going to eliminate the draft option for you. From there, then it becomes you're either going to go out and spend $12 million or more, I guess, per year on a tackle, or you're going to re-sign a core for. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take tackle totally off of the board. I think probably interior is more likely right now, but I understand the exercise that you're doing. My point is that you need to make some bigger, more significant radical changes to get more significant radical results. If you're kind of making tweaks and little changes here and there, you're not going to jump by the leaps and bounds that you want and frankly need to do the way that the Chiefs did. If you want Chiefs results, you got to do what the Chiefs did, which is go like scorched earth here.
Sure. But
so
when's the last time the Steelers scorched the earth?
Yeah, well, that's my point. That's kind of where the criticism is coming into play. But they'll also have more money this year. Usually they don't have the money to do some of those moves, and they'll have the capital now that the franchise quarterback is off the books.
Yeah, I'll end this discussion this way. Neither Hassenauer or KG Green can be the team's starting center in 2022, and don't be shocked if Chukwueze Okorafor is your starting right tackle.
Okay, so you think a 2022 Steelers offensive line will look like more Green, new center, or Dotson, Okorafor? Yes. Okay. Yeah, I don't get
and a big question mark there. When's the last time you ever exited the offseason really thrilled? Write that down, Alex. Because don't be surprised. Is all I'm saying. Look, people give a crap what we would do in this situation?
I understand, but I think it's good to talk about what we think should happen.
What I think
especially
should
so
happen
early
is you go out and get a premier right tackle. But that guy, if you're going to give him that kind of money, that guy's got to be, the leader of the locker room right out of the chute. That's got to be the guy that you're basically, anchoring things around. You're not going to pay a guy, that kind of money just to be an also ran, in the locker room and all like that.
Sure. And listen, I have no idea who's even available for free agency right now for offensive linemen. I mean, again, good offensive linemen don't hit the market too often. And when they do, there's such the price goes up so much because there's such a competition for them. So I haven't played this thing out in terms of like specific plans, but I'm just saying philosophically, there should be some changes, pretty big ones being made.
Right.
All right, Dave, anything else Mike Tomlin had?
I mean, let's look at some potential options here. Cam Robinson, hell no. Teron Armstead, it looks like his contract voids, but isn't he up there in age?
I don't think so. He's had some injuries. He's been a great left tackle for the Saints, though, whenever he's been healthy. I mean, he's a left
30
tackle.
years old.
Okay, well, I mean, offensive lineman, I think the injuries there are bigger concerns. And then, would he play right tackle is another consideration.
I'm looking at that's the left tackle list. Let me look at the right tackle list here. Uncheck left tackle. Trent Brown from the Patriots. He's 29.
Yeah. Well, he's younger than I thought he was.
Riley Reif is 34. Brandon Shell is 30. Jermaine Ifedi is 28. Looks like he's got a void coming up. Morgan Moses is 31. Matt Gono is 26. Mike Rimmers, 33. Nate Soldier, 34. Bobby Messi, no, thank you. 33. Ty Nasecki, I don't even know who that is. 37 years.
Washington swing guy.
Nasecki, he's with the Cowboys.
Yeah, well, he had played with Washington before. He's been like a career backup. Trent Brown's an interesting name. I mean, that's a mauler. That's a big dude, big physical presence in the run game. I don't know if the Patriots are going to let him get away, but I mean, obviously that's the first name you read off, but that's the name that's capturing my attention.
The more younger ones in here, once again, Matt Gono from the Falcons, Trenton Scott from the Panthers is 28. Brandon Parker from the Raiders is 27. Will Richardson from the Jaguars is 26. Yeah, I mean, it's not, obviously some are probably going to hit maybe as cap casualties, Some guy named Okorafor on here at 25 years old. Chikwama is his name. But anyway, don't be surprised is all I'm saying.
Yeah, and you could go through the draft. I mean, there is no reason why if you don't sign a Okorafor, there is no reason why you couldn't couldn't draft a right tackle.
All right, back to what Mike Tomlin said.
Yeah, let's see. Defensively, talked about Joe Sherbert.
Do you agree this team needs to do something at center? This team cannot have. Let's end the talk with this way. What needs to be done at center?
Yeah, I think you strongly look for an upgrade. I think it's tough. I don't have a lot of faith in Green right now at center or guard, and so I'm not trying to kick the guy out, but I guess I am, and I'm kind of moving on with the assumption that Green is not really part of my long-term plans. That may be different for them. They drafted the guy. They liked the guy more than I did, but that's where I'm at. And yes, I think something needs to be done.
The only reason I have any optimism left with Kendrick Green at guard is because I've yet to see him do it at the NFL. I have a good feeling of how it might go, but that's the only bit of optimism I have. They blew it there, I think. Be honest with you, but we'll reserve judgment. 6 games into the next season.
My thought with Green is that his path is probably becoming a versatile backup in Pittsburgh.
Right,
center guard. A better BJ Finney type of guy.
Let's see what else did Mike Tomlin have to say.
Talked about Joe Sherbert and appreciative of his efforts. Joe Hayden and the DB said there's a lot of layers and that he'd be open to doing business with guys like Hayden and Witherspoon and all those defensive back free agents to be, but said, free agency is a two-way street and those guys will have to weigh things. Joe Hayden did have a tweet yesterday saying that they have until March 14th to try to get a deal done. So he's not closing the door on a return to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but it had to be cheap at this point, you think? The guy is the salt of the earth kind of guy, perfect Steeler, yada yada. But there comes a time where money has to meet expectations of play. I mean, that was.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back to that Tennessee game, and that was one hell of a damn stop that guy had in that game. Won a football game, But on a year-to-year basis, what's the expectation with Joe Hayden?
Yeah, that Tennessee game kind of summed up where he's at well, where he made the great fourth down tackle on that Westbrook kid, that receiver. They also got burned by him earlier in the game for what should have been a touchdown, but the pass was underthrown, and Hayden was able to come in and break it up. So, yeah, with Witherspoon, because you can't bring back both those guys, right? You can't re-sign Hayden and Witherspoon.
If you pay Witherspoon, you're going to pay him to start.
Right. Yeah, you're paying starter money. No one's going to take that money to be nickel only, even in a nickel sub-package heavy world. So
you're not going to kick Cam Sutton back in. You're not going to have at least I wouldn't think you're going to have a starting. I don't think you're poised to start Hayden, Witherspoon, and Cam Sutton in the slot.
Yeah, you paid Sutton, and he had the expectation he was going to start, and he's been in that role all year long. So. Yeah, I think it's one or the other. And listen, I do have pause. I know you do as well about Witherspoon because it's a small sample size you're committing some decent money to, but I think he's the better future option.
With what this team does at cornerback and all, and my biggest thing with Witherspoon is be careful what you've seen on tape already. Because, there has been some bad that hasn't been highlighted enough, I don't think, right. Especially in some man type situations. I think I would re-sign him. Yes, I would just be careful with the guaranteed money. I don't, you don't want to get yourself in a situation where, oh man, that blew up in our face. We probably have to part ways with him after 1 year. When you sign him, you're obviously doing so with the idea that he's going to at least be there for 2 years, I think. And be careful is all I got to say. You got to be able to pull the ripcord on it if you need to.
And I do just want to recognize that if Hayden does walk, and I'm not guaranteeing that, but if it does happen from a leadership standpoint, intangible standpoint, mental standpoint.
Oh, that's a huge loss.
Yeah. Huge. And I don't know really who's going to fill that void for a group that's still relatively young and could get younger if they add some guys in the offseason. So, yeah, I just don't want to forget about that because that would be a massive loss for that room.
Look, I mean, that guy's salt of the earth, like I said, and it would be a huge loss from that aspect there.
Right, and Witherspoon's not gonna provide that, obviously. So
maybe you get Cam Sutton to kind of be that guy,
Yeah, Minka will have to step up, and Cam for sure. So I mean, guys can fill those roles, but Hayden was. I mean, everyone talked about what Hayden meant to them. Pierre and Norwood, and just learning and just how to carry yourself as a pro.
Look, I mean, it's a shame that guy couldn't play his whole career in Pittsburgh, but that's how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, this guy needs to win a playoff game once in his career. I don't want to be all Joe Thomas on him, and just never even have that feeling of what a playoff victory is like. This guy's 0 for 3 in his career, 0 for 2 in games that he's played in, and that just you feel for the guy.
Right.
Anything else from Tomlin? I think we kind of hit on most of the meat of Tomlin's presser.
I thought there was one or two things more. What about Kevin Colbert's future?
Yeah, it didn't say much there. Just said, he'll let Colbert address any sort of future plans, but basically said that Colbert's already talking to him about Senior Bowl stuff and draft prep and all those things. So it sounds like Colbert's certainly not retiring tomorrow or anything like that.
His comments about guys like Devin Bush and Zach Banner, how do you weigh the recovery, fifth-year option? Hard to kind of parse this. Those decisions aren't made in a vacuum when you're talking about fifth-year options and things of that nature. There's a global component to it. In terms of the rest of the squad, I'm appreciative of the efforts of both guys. It's not an easy process for either guy. We would have liked it to be more fluid. They would have liked it be more fluid to produce more consistent fluid productivity and availability, but it is what it was. And that's often the case when you deal with major knee injury. It's not always fluid. You like to hope it is, but it's not always the case. And so I think it's acceptable to say we expect 2022 to be significantly better for most. I think most statistical data and things that I can reference, experiences that I can reference, that is the case as well. And so 2021 was what it was for those guys. I think we should all look and can look optimistically in regards towards what 2022. Now, obviously, Banner, you're not dealing with a fifth-year option, but you're dealing with $5 million. that he's still under contract for. This doesn't scream we're picking up Devin Bush's fifth-year option, only that Devin Bush, should be on the roster in 2022 still.
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a debate about will or won't they pick up the fifth-year option on Devin Bush. They're not going to do that. It's a lot of word salad from Tomlin. Basically saying is that it takes 2 years to fully recover from that ACL, and so it's hard to make too many judgments based on their play, although Banner didn't really play, a year out from that injury. But yeah, Bush, they're not going to pick up the option, and Banner, I don't know how you justify keeping him. I mean, that's $5 million in cap savings, 4.2, 4.3 after displacement. That's some good money to put in your pocket.
Yeah, that could go towards a purchase of a new $12 or $13 million a year tackle.
Right now, that guy's only 8. Once you kind of do the difference and all that,
So, I mean, look, that's another guy that gets the whole culture quote thing and all, but. I mean, what has he really done at the NFL level at the tackle position?
Yeah, that's the conversation we have every single time we talk about Zach Banner. Like, love the guy, good guy, all those great things, but it's a business, and unless he's going to start next year, you can't keep him to play just right tackle. Just be a true backup right tackle and right tackle only. And
I don't know how you can have any confidence that he can be a starting right tackle in the NFL. Period. I mean, it's wing and a prayer type stuff at this point, you know?
So that's where I'm at, and we'll see what the team does, but I don't think Banner's making it to camp.
It'd be tough. It'd be tough to justify. Look, I mean, if he goes down injured, you have to pay that $5 million, right? Didn't I, the Joe Schobert quote, it's hard to kind of see Joe surviving this thing too. Tyson Alu and Stephon Tuitt going to be quite a couple of guys talked about. It sounds like Tyson Alu has every intention of playing, right?
Yeah, he had an Instagram post yesterday that said to the effect of, I'm coming back, or I want to come back. I can't go out the way that I went out with that fractured ankle. So assuming the Steelers want him back, and they should, he'll be back in 2022. So that's very good news. I know Tuitt's the better player, but I don't think this team missed anyone on this team more than Tyson Alualu this year.
You're not going to get much of an argument out of that, but I will say they missed both of them.
For sure. But that guy in the middle, and maybe just because the drop off from Tuitt to Wormley was less than the drop off from Alualu to Buggs, and Adams played well at the end of the year, but they were already bleeding pretty bad by the time Adams came on scene and didn't get a whole lot better.
Hey, Alualu cost you $2.5 million in 2022. It's worth it just to see if he still has it at that price, especially if he's able to pick up where he left off at, even if there is a slight decline of play and you're able to maybe, we talked about even had he played in 2021, how great would have been if you kind of lessened the load on him a little bit to kind of maximize the snaps when he was on the field. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Who knows what's going to happen with Montravius Adams. We'll have that talk for another podcast here for sure. But imagine having both Tyson Alualu and Montravius Adams at your disposal in 2022. That's not a bad situation, I don't think, to be in.
No, it's a really good position to be in. And I know Alualu's going to be 35. I looked it up last night, though. It's been a lot of Steelers defensive linemen who have played till they were 35 or in year 35. Whether that's go back to L.C. Greenwood, Joe Green, more recent guys. Casey Hampton played till he was 35. So did Travis Kershke. I think Brett Kiesel did as well. So there's a longer list of names here than I thought when you think about a 35-year-old defensive lineman.
Okay. So we the conversation about Mike Tomlin said he hadn't had a conversation with those kind of vets just yet, but the big question will obviously be what's going to happen with Stephon Tuitt, and I don't think anybody knows yet.
I don't know either, but I think it's a pretty simple equation. If Tuitt wants to return and is able to return, then he comes back, and there's really not much of a conversation about it. It's just a question of if his heart's still in it and stuff like that, and I'm proceeding as of now under the assumption he will be back until I'm told otherwise.
Well, my biggest question about the whole thing is, does he still want to play? I mean, right. To me, it's a no-brainer to let him play in 2022 if he wants to play, because
Right.
I mean it's a $9 million salary that you're dealing with there. I mean, I could think of a lot worse ways to spend $9 million.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to. If he wants to come back, he says, "Listen, I'm good. I'm reset. We're good to go." Then we'll come back to it easily.
Because even if you were to, people I think are there's some subset of people screaming, just go ahead and cut him and all like that. I mean, you only save, I think, $4.2 million, $4.3 million almost by cutting him now, And then when you throw in the displacement on top of it, then you're under $4 million. I mean, if the guy wants to play, you let him play.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. Anything else from Tomlin's presser, Dave?
I think we got through the bulk of it there, right?
I think so too. And so I know there are players still talking with the media today. Dwayne Haskins has met with the media and said that Kevin Colbert has told him he'll have a chance to compete and start in 2022. So we assume his team will put the original round tender on Haskins, and he'll be in that mix with Rudolph and whoever else becomes part of that competition.
Right. And that's been I think our line of thinking all along here. As long as he kept his nose clean, he was on course to get the original round restricted tender.
Right. Dave, you had a terrible take yesterday about Diontae Johnson and his future and contractually what could happen. He spoke with the media earlier this week and said it would be a blessing to get a contract extension, but obviously, they're far away from really, having any potential talks there. So just kind of expand on what you're thinking when it comes to a possible extension for Diontae Johnson.
Yeah, look, it would have been to record the same segment 5 weeks ago versus recording it right now to match the two up and more from to get a listener's reaction to it here. Without a doubt, Diontae Johnson, the drop issues resurfaced, did they not, at the end of the season?
They did.
All right. If there was one kind of reaction that you would have to Diontae Johnson's 2021 season, it would be probably those drops and those drops alone, right?
From a negative standpoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, the inability to finish the season strong, just kind of waning down the stretch is kind of the negative light on the season.
But everything else, the separation, the route running, the after catch, football IQ, all that is where you would probably want it and expect it to be, right?
Yes, I don't want to forget how good of a season it was for Diontae Johnson, and he was clearly this team's best receiver. Even in those last couple of weeks, he was probably still this team's best receiver. So obviously you want him to finish the year better, but I don't want to let the last 4 weeks kind of make us forget about how good the first 13, 14 were.
Well, the narrative seems to be on him right now. A lot of fans of the team, good riddance. Don't give this guy a contract and all. But I think the conversations are going to happen regardless. This is a guy going into the final year of his contract. Now is normally when you sign those people up. There's probably not many people listening to this podcast that don't think Minkah Fitzpatrick won't have a contract by the time the 2022 season starts. When you're talking about other potential guys that could sign extensions during the offseason, Diontae Johnson's right in that wheelhouse there. So the question then becomes, will they indeed try to re-sign him, and what is the market value on him?
Yeah, and that was your take yesterday, kind of going into some of those things, basically at least setting a floor for him about he's not going to take less than X, which I believe was, $15 million, not less. Courtland Sutton's contract kind of sets the floor for a Diontae Johnson extension. Would
you agree with that statement?
I defer to you on a lot of this stuff because I don't research it the way that you do. But yes, I think that's a fair assessment.
All right. I kind of have that sweet spot from him. I mean, is it out of question that Diontae would angle for top 10 wide receiver money? Well, obviously these guys want to get as much as they possibly want to get, right?
Yeah, you shoot for the stars and land on the moon and you take it.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, top 10, 16.75 million would put him, based on the way things sit right now, 16.75 million new money average would put him in the top 10. Is that too rich?
again, you have a better feel for those things than I do. My thought is that he'll be in that 10 to 15 range. So I suppose that puts him in that 16.5 to
17.5.
Okay. Well, what's 15 make? What's like the 15th receiver? Is that
1,
15
2,
million?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It'll be Cooper Kupp range, which is $5.75 million.
At 15th highest paid receiver?
Yep.
At $5.75 million.
15.75.
Oh, you said 5. Okay. 15 points. Okay. So yeah, I'm in that 15.5 to 16.5 million range, which puts him in that 10 to 15 range.
Okay. That's right where I'm at right there. I think we're looking at somewhere between, and I'll go floor of 15.25 million to 17.5 million. I think that's kind of the range there. Now, that's what I think his market value is. What do you think the Steelers think about that, or will think about that? Let's attack it this way. No way he signs for less than that, right?
Right. At that point, you would bet on yourself for a great 2022 and then look at the market after the upcoming season. Right.
Okay.
That's kind of the way I would look at it.
If he can't get that, then he plays out his and he's going to get a slight bump in pay because he qualified for the proven performance escalator. But we knew he was going to qualify for that after last season. It was only a matter of could he make the Pro Bowl to get himself a little bit even more money. That you want a reason why he was upset? Why he didn't make?
I didn't make that connection. That makes sense.
Yeah, he's losing out on another million or so or more in 2022 by not making a Pro Bowl. Had he made a Pro Bowl, he stood to make a little bit more money.
Yeah, that's $1 million Pro Bowl snub. So I get it. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's going to be the floor for him to answer your question.
All right. So now will he get it?
I don't know.
Should he get it?
I understand the last couple of weeks kind of put a sour taste in your mouth for how this, his season, but man, he was so good for large chunks of this season. And I think you saw some real improvement from him, and you saw the work ethic and all the time that he put in. So I would not be upset about it. I think he needs still things to work on, of course, but to answer your question, yeah, I think he's worth that kind of money.
I do as well too. And here's the thing, though. We don't have much of a track record to work with when it comes to Steelers paying wide receivers top 10 to 15 money. We do have kind of a top 15 on the books. What they did with Antonio Brown back in 2012, a lot of people look back at that and say, "Oh, that was huge money at the time." Well, it ended up it was a new money average. If correct me if I'm wrong, $8.5 million back then, and back then that had him outside the top 10. I think it had him in the top 15 if memory serves me, but not top 10. They made a deal that there was no way Antonio Brown could turn that thing down. Plus, on top of it, they obviously had a lot different rules when it came to guaranteed money on top of it. And because back then players 3 years were restricted free agents, they put together an offer that there was no way Antonio Brown could refuse because of restricted free agent lassos and all like that. Okay. So it's kind of hard to use that even as a past experience there, and if they did pay Deontay Johnson this kind of money that we talked about, for a second contract for a wide receiver, it would kind of be unprecedented, when it comes to this team.
Yeah, I don't think it would prevent them from doing it, though. Obviously,
I'm just saying it'd be unprecedented for what I'm not saying they shouldn't do it or won't do it. I think, look. Good X receivers that can get that kind of separation, man, are kind of hard to find,
Yeah. And to the point I made Monday, it was, in the Ben era, this team drafted receivers so well, partially because they scouted well and found talented guys, Deontay included. But when you had a Hall of Fame quarterback, it made those receivers look a bit better, especially early on. Now that your Hall of Fame quarterback's gone, you want really good receivers and skill guys to make that quarterback look better. And so you want to retain even more so those skill guys.
All right, I don't want to spend we'll have plenty of time to talk about this, but my gut feeling as we sit here right now is that they will get something done with him. at least a price of $15 million new money average, and go forward from there. Where are you on this? Your gut think they get something done with him by, and obviously this wouldn't probably happen until on into the summer.
Yeah, it's far out, so I haven't thought about it a lot. I'm basically in the same camp as you, that I think there's a good chance things will get done. But of course, it depends on what Deontay's asking for. If he's asking for, top 5, top 7 money, then that conversation will change based on, the likelihood of a deal getting done or not.
I mean, if he's wanting top 5 money and put himself in the 20 million range, that's going to be tough to do. Had he not had the drop issues and all, there would be a discussion there. And also too, here's another thing. These guys are now looking at TJ Watt kicked the wall down, busted the wall down with guaranteed money now. So Minka's going to expect the first 2 or 3 years of his deal to be fully guaranteed. And a wide receiver like Deontay Johnson is going to be expecting that as well too.
Sure. And last thought, and again, we'll see what happens. But if we assume the report is Kevin Colbert retires after the draft, there'll be a new GM handling some of that stuff by the time Deontay's contract comes up in the summer. So just one other factor to consider.
All right. But the only reason that's become more topical, I think, is because of what's happened in these last 5 weeks. If we would have had the same conversation, at least from a listener standpoint, listeners saying, "Oh yeah, you're going to extend him, right?"
And we had this conversation about a month or so ago, right before things got ugly for him, and everyone was like, "Yeah, all for it."
But I bet a lot of people have turned their opinion. I mean, at least the vocal minority, I guess you would call them, on Twitter. No, heck no, I ain't going to pay him that.
No, I had a guy in my YouTube comments saying trade the guy, and it's like, come on. I mean, we're so reactionary to just small, snippets of play.
Here's something else that I think that needs to be in consideration as well too. You without a doubt, you want Juju back, right?
Yeah, I would like to. Sure.
All right. What's Juju's market value at this point, and how is that going to settle in the locker room if you paid 2 guys considerably different new money amounts?
I mean, that's just based on the market and performance. Deontay's coming off a really strong year, and Juju's coming off a year where he barely played. So I don't think there'll be a locker room issue. Usually that issue only exists whenever you sign an outside guy instead of paying one of your inside guys. And there's kind of some blowback internally about that stuff, but I don't think there'll be an issue with the locker room on that. I mean,
is Juju worth more or less than $8 million a season?
I think based on, it's hard to give him more than what he got this past year because the guy got hurt and he barely played. So, I mean, I think it'll be, in theory, is he worth more than that? Sure, when he's fully healthy, but based on the market conditions, he's probably going to get less than that. Okay.
What if he even, would you say 8 million is a ceiling for a guy like him right now?
I think it's a really weird situation because also the cap's going to go back up this year. So there's a lot of competing factors there. So I don't have a great way to cap things or floors or ceilings or stuff like that. I think it is kind of a more gray area on that. I think it would be would it just be a 1-year deal? Would he take a multi-year deal for probably less money instead of just trying to get healthy on a 1-year deal and cash in again after the season?
That's a great question.
I mean, why would you commit yourself? I know he's talked about, I want a 4-year deal, but if it's going to be 4 years for $8 million, why would you handcuff yourself like that instead of taking 1 year for $7 million and trying to cash in big next year?
Right. I mean, it sounds like he's ready for a 4-year deal, but are you going to
Is he ready for 4-year money in his current conditions?
Right. You could get in a situation here when the dust settles that his new money average is right at about half of what Deontay's is. And I don't know how that would set.
He's probably doesn't want to do the 1-year dance thing again because just the uncertainty of where am I going to play next year and all those things. But it's hard to commit yourself if you're that average, money's not going to be particularly strong, which I can't imagine it would be. He's not going to get Deontay money on a 4-year deal, obviously, based off the season he just had. I mean,
you got Stephon Diggs, who's in the latter years of the contract that he signed, but Stephon Diggs, pretty damn good player still, right?
Very good player.
His new money average, he's going to be clamoring for some more. If Buffalo gets this thing on into the Super Bowl and all like that, he's going to probably want something done with 1 year remaining on his. Anyway, 14.4 million is where he's at right now, and he's down the list now. I mean, obviously, it's been several years since he's done that. I mean, you got Devontae Adams at 4.5. And you got what you have is you got some guys come on the back end of some of these deals. You got some guys on the front end of some of these deals right now. So you got to kind of factor where does Juju fit in on that. But it's hard to imagine a guy like Juju getting the 14.5 million, right?
Yeah,
at this point.
But yeah, I can't imagine that is going to happen.
And then it's hard to imagine a guy like Deontay taking less than that 14.5 million.
Right.
So anyway, going to be an interesting dynamic to see this work out with two wide receivers here, both to who that you really would probably want locked up.
Yeah, no, I understand that for sure. Speaking of contracts, there was a report or the thought that I think from Keep 'Em Over the Cap, and you expanded on that in a post yesterday for Steelers Depot about Ben's contract. And I believe this is what happened with Drew Brees. Correct me if I'm wrong, but basically Ben could wait until after June 1st to officially submit his retirement paperwork, and that would give this team cap relief for 2022.
Yeah, what David had, and it's somewhat similar to what I think what the Saints had to do is lower a base salary down significantly. I don't think there was void language. I'll have to go back and look at it. I don't think it was more from a void language based issue as it was Drew Brees had an extremely high base salary that they had to work down, negotiate down in order to help them defer money. And, it is similar to some degree, but not exactly the same. Okay. The crux of this, I think, what they were getting at there is, you'd have to talk around the void language here. All right. So if that contract voided, then it voids, right? And then all that dead money comes rushing forward there. So I think part of this process over the next, it had to happen here in the next few weeks, if indeed the void date's 5 days after the Super Bowl. I mean, you're talking a little more than 3 weeks here, is you have to erase the void language from the contract so the contract doesn't void, and then agree that his base salary would be the NFL minimum in 2022, which would be $1.12 million, and then say, all right, anytime after June 1st, go ahead and officially retire that way. And then we'd obviously put you on a reserve retired list at that point. And then any other prorated money would, of course, dump into 2023. This is just a way that initially out of the chute, it would save you $6.63 million in 2022, and it would defer $7.755 million dead money into 2023. That would the way the contract's set now, be part of the dead money this year. So here's the question. Do you want to eat the $7.755 million in 2022, or do you want to eat it in 2023? That's that. And do you really want to save that $7.755 million this year or not? It's not like this is a magical mechanism here that, look at this loophole. It's just a matter when you want to eat the dead money. Do you want the extra $7.755 million to play with this year or not?
It's the phrase that you use, I'll gladly pay you a hamburger, whatever how the saying goes. I don't know how it goes. I'm not old. Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that.
It's just a question of, what are your plans? If you're planning on spending big this year with some key free agents you really want to go after, then you probably make this move. But they don't have to. They're not going to be cap strapped the way they were almost every other year in under Ben. So they don't have to do it. But if they do it, then that might be an indication that they want to spend more heavily in free agency.
And look, if you don't use it, you can roll it over.
That's true as well. And so, by the way, when we talk about officially retire, we're talking about submitting paperwork with the NFL, getting placed on the reserve retired list. And so that's what we refer to when we say like officially retired.
Right. And will they go, I guess the question people say, okay, we don't care about the minutia. Are they going to do it or not? I don't know. It's more speculation that they could do it, but we will, I think, have our answer in 3.5 weeks. Whether or not they will do it. Pros and cons to it. Well, I mean, you get an extra $7.75 million eventually to play with this year in cap space if you need it. And if you don't need it, then you would just roll it over into 2023, that kind of thing. So do I know which way this is going to go? No, I do not.
Really, there's no downside to not doing it now, because if you don't use it, you just roll it over, right? So there's really no major downside to using this as a tool.
Right. Really, there's not. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, Ben could still have his retirement press conference and all that stuff. It wouldn't be that he'd be waiting until June for those things. It just wouldn't be officially submitted to the NFL until after June 1st. Right.
He could have his retirement press conference tomorrow, and you just don't submit the papers, and the back side of it, would just be handled after June the 1st.
Right. So yeah, why not do it then? I mean, you're not really presenting a downside to it, so why would you not use this as just a flexible option?
Right. People say, well, why put more dead money? Why start stacking dead money into 2023? Why not go ahead and eat it now when you can probably absorb it? Okay, I suppose, but once again, if you don't use it, you can roll that over. Roll it on over into 2023 either. So. 6 and 1, half dozen the other, or as Wimpy would say, Jay Wellington Wimpy would say, I'd gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
There you go. I had the gist of the saying. I just wanted you to. Who is Wimpy?
From the old Popeye, right?
Is it Popeye? Right. Yeah, right. I don't know. I barely watched. So okay, gotcha.
He was
a character in
Popeye. Jay Wellington Wimpy, generally referred to as Wimpy, is one of the characters in the comic strip Popeye.
Okay, well, there you go. All right, Dave. Let's see. I think the last thing I wanted to get to before we read emails, and we'll just kind of go through this briefly because I don't think many people really care anymore, but just all 22 review of the Chiefs loss. I know we've both gone through the tape for this game. What are your thoughts in terms of why this game turned out the way that it did?
Another indictment somewhat to the coaching staff to some degree. I mean, boy, a lot of misses on a lot of things that shouldn't happen on offense happen. That this, they're already hampered on offense as it was going into this game, and they obviously could not afford to have kind of the giveaway plays, if you will. And there were a lot of plays that right from the start were not long after the snap of the football that were destined to fail because of assignment errors.
Yeah. Chiefs were the better team. They beat the Steelers, but the Steelers beat the Steelers pretty good in this game, which has been a theme all too often. So I have a video this morning on Steelers Depot that goes through, I think, 8 plays, 6 on offense, 2 on defense, to just highlight some of the mental mistakes and communication issues and stuff like that really doomed this team even more than they were probably already doomed.
Boy, and then, one that I hadn't even gotten back around to that you highlighted there that, okay, that's happened. That old weird looking handoff to Najee Harris. You instantly go, what kind of play call is that?
Right.
Well, that was Juju not running a slant when Ben expected him to, and Ben trying to salvage the thing by shoving the ball in
poor Najee
in Najee's belly there. And once again, an offensive coordinator is only good as the execution of that. And another good one that you picked up too is you had a miscommunication between LeGlue and JC about who on a double team who's going to come off and go.
They both came off,
and they both came off and left the defensive tackle unblocked there. So whose fault is that? I guess at the core, people are yelling at it. Well, that's why you need to fire the coaches, because they're not doing a good job to have people execute. But, you can coach guys up all you want to blue in your face. If they don't execute properly on the field, then who do you put it on?
Yeah, and it's wild card weekend. I mean, unless the coaches are just abysmal at their jobs, which some people will say Canada is, these guys should know this stuff by now. You shouldn't be missing these basic assignment kind of mental errors. LeGlue started a ton of games. Hasenhutt's played quite a bit. Shouldn't have these problems, but there were the sack that Ben took, the D tackle straight up the middle. Turner thought Hassenauer was sliding his way. He didn't, and so that's how you get a free sack. The weird handoff, that was an RPO. Ben was going to throw it. Juju ran the wrong route, so Ben tried to hand it back off to Najee. Just a lot of ugly, and I've come away saying that far too often after games this season.
Most of those were in the first half, no?
The majority, yeah, offensively came in the first half, yeah.
And how many plays did you run in the first half, Alex? You ran 3, 6, 9, 14, 14 and 10, 24, 27 plays.
Yeah.
And one was a kneel down.
Yeah. So it's probably good. I don't know. 20% of them had just clear communication issues.
I mean, that's not great, Bob.
No, not at all. And defensively, there were some issues as well. Not nearly as bad offensively. Defensively, we're just kind of more like the Chiefs are a better team, more talented, and they just kind of finally got theirs. But you had Devin Bush missing assignment. You had, I think, UG3 missing assignment on taking the back in the flat. So you also had mental mistakes there as well.
So you already had an offense that you're worried about whether or not they could put points on the board, even if they executed properly. And then you throw out 25 of a very low number of snaps that they had as, execution errors.
Yeah, I think about the Bengals game where they got blown out. 10% of those snaps were just doomed, just massive errors that gave this team no chance to make it work. So one reason why they're struggling so much is because they just can't play assignment sound football. And if you can't do that, I don't care about the talent and the scheme. None of that really matters if you can't carry out your assignment. Right.
So good job by you. And look, once this thing got away from him in the second half too. I mean, you have blown cover 6 by Bush, and I think that was more earlier in the game, right? Or was it third quarter?
I think third quarter, early second half. I think when they started pouring it on.
And then you have you got guys like Gilbert on the field, them losing that losing running back / wide receiver out to the edge there. It just got away from them big time there. And not being able to get consistent enough pressure on a mobile quarterback obviously played a big role with Mahomes being able to extend some plays. And you get into the second half of this thing and you get distracted easily. At that point, we're looking at the all 22.
They did blitz Mahomes more than I thought they would. I don't think it was terribly effective, but they did send more pressure than I anticipated.
All right. Anything else sticking? We probably I know I spent less time on the all 22 this week because of last game. I'll go through it more fine tooth comb at some point here when I get bored.
I would just say the vertical shots that failed I mean, they just threw so many deep balls that just landed nowhere, weren't even close to being competitive. And sometimes, again, there was some miscommunication there, but overall, just kind of summed up the offense. A lot of just failed vertical outside shots that really weren't even close to being caught.
Was that a drop by Deontay or no?
Which one? You have to be more specific, unfortunately, with the
one over to the left side that he turned his back and leaped, and it went right through his hands. It was over his head, but
I'm trying to think. I can't remember that play off the top. Was it in my video? I don't think it was.
No, let me send you the still of it real quick here, and it'll remind you super quick here.
I know we had obviously the 1 3rd and 2 drop, which I believe was our turning point from Tyler Wise, which was
this was more into the Chiefs end of the field here.
Just based off of the still, I remember the play. Is that Claypool or was that Deontay?
No, that's Claypool.
Okay, you said Deontay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Claypool.
Okay, that's why that's getting thrown off. It's one of those where it's not a true drop where it hits you in the hands, but it's a play where he's capable of making that play.
I mean, that's why you drafted a guy to make these plays, right?
Right. So short answer, yes, I would call that a drop.
All right. I mean, you're leaving these kind of plays on the field against a team that already struggled. We already threw out 25% of the first half plays because of execution issues. You throw out 3 more due to drops at least, right?
Right. Yep.
I mean, we done rattled off 30 plays. I mean, 30 total plays, and then we found instances of damn near 30% of them.
Yeah, and then Ben threw some lame ducks too. The deep balls were not pretty even. Putting the drop and communication issues aside.
You had an issue with his second to last throw of the game, did you not?
A little bit. It was a little tongue in cheek, but maybe it sums up Ben just taking the 5-yard check down instead of throwing the sluggo. I mean, just put the ball in the end zone once, Ben, but it's fine.
All right. Nothing talking about that game, I think.
And also John LeGlue, I just like watching him run around. He'll just run at it. He's like the ultimate effort guy. He's not very good, but he's going to try hard.
All right, where to?
I think we should get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, I'm with you. Brian Kotos writes in, David Alex, questions, thoughts regarding Matt Canada if he is retained this year and the Steelers drafted quarterback regardless of round, with intentions of that being the next franchise guy. Wouldn't that signal Tomlin's faith in Canada going forward? It would be a bad move to draft a guy to have Canada be his OC for 1 year and then fire him and replace him the next with someone else. Long way of saying Tomlin should be sure this is the guy he sees developing the next franchise guy if one is drafted. Brian, I don't look at it that way. I think you go get the player, you worry about the coaching end of it later.
Yeah, I get the thought there, and I've had the same thought. If there was a year to kind of have that clean, fresh slate, with a new quarterback, a new OC, this would probably be the year. But there's no guarantee you get that quarterback. Even if you like that guy, are you going to get him? Is he going to fall to you? Someone going to trade up and get him? Something's going to happen. He gets hurt. Who knows? So I think it's hard to play with those equations because the decision on Canada is going to be made a lot earlier than the decision on what quarterback are we taking, who are we drafting, and all those kinds of things.
Right. Brian, I definitely understand the angle that you're going there, but we're all day to day, brother, whether it be job or what have you. Get the player, worry about what happens, get the right player first.
Yeah, I understand the thought there, but really it's hard to think about all those things and play that 4D chess because it just doesn't work out that cleanly. You focus on, is Canada worth bringing back? Yes. Is a quarterback worth taking? Yes. That's how you evaluate those things.
Alex, got one from one of your people here, a Clarion alumni.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Dave G, Seaford, Delaware via Irwin, Pennsylvania. Hey, David Alex, with DJ's drop issues, can they work in a production bonus that heavily dictates his pay? If he catches 100 passes, he gets X, but if he drops 6 passes or more, he loses $1 million. I don't know the precedents on that, but he needs to be accountable for his mistakes. And I couldn't think of a better option. Dave, good luck with getting a player to agree to something like that. Now, obviously, there are incentive contracts and all. We heard going into the final week, guys like Gronkowski needing X and Antonio Brown and all like that.
One of those guys hit their incentives.
Yeah,
One of them didn't.
Exactly. I'll tell you this, just from an organizational perspective, the Steelers hate dealing with what they would call likely to be earned incentives and not likely to be earned incentives. They absolutely hate doing that. Players, if at all possible, are going to try to stay away from incentive type deals as well too. So theoretically, could you do something like that? Yes. No way in hell Deontay Johnson agrees to any kind of drop related, catch related performance bonus.
Yeah, there's never been a situation where a player lost money in a contract because something happened. I mean, you can have incentives to gain money, but there is nothing, I don't know if it's even allowed to take a pay cut because of a drop issue or something like that. Why do you think that is? The Steelers are very anti-incentive. Some teams are very pro-incentive based, and the Steelers are against that.
Yeah, I think they like to know what they're dealing with, and don't want to feel pressured to get a player a certain amount of catches or something along those lines. That's a great question. That Kevin Colbert probably would need to be asked. That's kind of questions we would ask if we were in the room there. That's a good question. Yeah. I don't have an answer to it. Now,
I think your answer is a good one, though. It makes sense.
But prior to Colbert, Donahoe, there was, you go back through some of those old contracts. There was some not likely to be earned and likely to burn. The Steelers don't even like the per game roster bonus type things, because when they couldn't, when they traded for Vance McDonald, they hated, they tried to work that out as quickly as possible,
And did they take it out? Did they rework it to remove the bonus?
I don't know if they ever got him completely out of there. I think in that last restructure, they were able to get it out of there for his final year, all of it.
Yeah. So if you're going to ask Colbert, ask quickly because there are too many Colbert pressers coming down the road.
Daniel Wilson writes in, I'm so sick of hearing fire Matt Canada. Was he great this year? No. No. Was that his fault? Could be, but we saw the same exact offense last year, and Canada wasn't the OC. Let's put some blame on Ben. I'm sure Canada was calling plays that Ben wanted to run, or was not calling some plays that Ben wanted to run. With that being said, after the first Chiefs touchdown with about 6 minutes to go, the offense went 3 and out, putting the Chiefs back on the field, blah, blah, blah. Also, Deontay can't catch over the middle, so let's stop sending him that way. Watching this offense run the same plays over and over all season, nothing to lose, was just plain irritating. I'm sad to see Ben go, but at the same time, he probably should have been done after his elbow injury. I'm not excited for Mason, but I'm ready to see something new from this offense. And I think Mason can bring new elements that we fans thought we could see from Ben, but he just didn't have it anymore. P.S. Mason played fine against the Lions. He didn't give up 200 yards rushing, two fumbles in overtime. He managed the game like he was supposed to. Can't expect him to be a superstar quarterback level. Need real expectations. Thanks, Danny. Danny, I do think that Mason was not perfect in that Lions game, but when you look at some of those late, a lot of people forget the fumbles late in that game, and if you want to boil it down to the end of the game, overtime type period, had they not put some balls on the ground there, the Steelers probably won that game. Now, he did have an awful interceptions in that as well, too. The Balaj, throw to Balaj that was picked off and all like that. Look, he's not perfect. Absolutely. I still think he's the odds-on favorite right now to be the week 1 starter until we hear otherwise here. What about the thoughts about Canada? We hit on a lot of the Canada stuff already, though.
Yeah, I think there's just more nuance to it. I get the frustration, and obviously fans, the first thing they want to do is fire the OC and stuff like that. And again, I have many criticisms of him, and I'll articulate that throughout the offseason. But I'm not as upset about the news that he's likely to stay as most people are.
And the whole Deontay catch over the middle, you can't take that. I mean, if you're not going to have Deontay run that slant, then you don't re-sign him.
Yeah, an X receiver has to run the full route tree, and that means over the middle. And I mean, he's gonna. I think some of that, some people say he's scared. He can't catch over the middle. I think some of that's overstated. It was an issue later in the year, but he's made a lot of catches over the middle of the field this year.
He does tend to alligator armor a little bit and hear footsteps sometimes over the middle, but when he does catch one at 1 yard distance, takes it for 49 yards. That's kind of hard to ignore there. Richard writes in, good day, Dave and Alex. There's some things that have been weighing on my mind lately when it comes to Steelers operations, so feel free to debunk. The Steelers have been gradually becoming what my friends and I call cautious risk takers. That started far back as Artie Burns' draft pick, which, don't quote me, was the first defensive back taken in the first round by them in a long time. The others that stand out, not in order: Joe Hayden signing a little old for what they usually go after, the Minka trade, Najee drafted in the first round, TJ Watt contract guarantees. I say all this so I know when we discuss quarterbacks of the future, we assume the same path from Ben 20 years ago. I don't think this is the same NFL or the same Steelers in thought process. I'm open to whatever happens, but I don't think we as Steeler fans should resign to saying, hey, we'll do this thing again, because those traditions seem to be modifying. All right. What do you say about that?
I mean, there's a lot there. So the premise is the Steelers' philosophy is evolving over the years. Is that basically what he's saying?
Long and short of he's saying, don't take past track records and try to put them on decisions that this team makes now. That's the long and short of it. In other words, this team hasn't drafted a cornerback in the first round, prior to Artie Burns all those years. A team not trading. Look, this is a new era now for sure. And, when's the last time the Steelers drafted a quarterback under 6'2"? That might be tested this year.
Yeah, I mean, I get there's always that competing thought between old and new, and those streaks and things are going to be broken at some point. But it just depends. I think when you get into hyper specific things, then it matters less. But on some of the big picture stuff, like maybe free agency age and certainly pro day things and pedigree and stuff like that, it holds more water because it's a broader thought and more of a philosophical value thought, and there's just probably more of a track record to support some of those things. So it just depends on what I think track record and history you're talking about. that kind of determines how important it is for us to remember.
Look, with this hour and hour 15-minute show, thanks to me, turned into 2 hours again.
Yeah, we're not hour 15
here, but I saw this one. I want to hit. We got a lot of questions in here, so I apologize. That we're not going to hit all of them here. But I saw this one. I wanted to address this one from Justin Brisbane. I think Justin's our guy in Down Underland, isn't he?
I believe so.
He didn't say in this one here. In the past, when talking Dave, this question is for you. In the past, when talking about other teams' quarterback situations, you have routinely taken the stance that if you don't have the guy at quarterback, then you should draft 2 in every draft until you find one. I'm not sensing that same sentiment from you now that the Steelers are in that predicament. Maybe I'm reading too much into what you say, but you don't sound nearly as high or as all in on finding the next guy yet as Alex or most fans do. Am I right on that? And if so, what is your reasoning? To me, the guy that touches the ball the most and is the most important position on the field should be priority number 1, and it's not even close. Look, you're not going to get an argument out of me you have to have a franchise quarterback to some degree. Now, have teams I guess, what do you define as a franchise quarterback? Is Jimmy Garoppolo a franchise quarterback?
Well, my definition is just a long-term, established, high-level starter.
Okay. If indeed that is the case, then and the likelihood of you getting such a player is obviously through the draft. Look, if the Steelers came out and spent their first two draft picks on quarterbacks, okay, and then filled in the rest of the holes with whatever draft picks they had left, and then money in free agency to the limit, would I be disappointed? No, I wouldn't. In fact, you know what? Let's start a push, Alex, that this team goes whatever one you want to throw in the first round there. Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, Malik. All right, take your pick there. Draft that guy. Turn around in the second round and draft Carson Strong. All right.
Okay.
Hell yeah, throw mud at it. But there's a reality sense of this thing that I am responsible for as well too.
What do you mean by that? The reality sense
of what the team will do versus what I think they should do.
And you say that in regards to they're not going to draft 2 quarterbacks in the
right.
Draft. Right. Yeah. Unless they're going to go Washington and RG3 Kirk Cousins, it really doesn't happen.
Right. Now, how tempted would you be to draft 2 quarterbacks early in this thing?
Not very. I'm okay. Trying to think of a joke here. I can't think of a good one. A one man show.
Okay.
No, I was trying to think of some stupid dating joke, which I shouldn't make because I'll open up a can of worms. But yeah, just get one guy and assume that he's your guy and try to make him your guy.
And look, I said this, for years in relation to teams like, Cleveland and all like that. And yeah, it's probably more tongue in cheek than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Draft 2 every year until you find one. But look, this is a team in the Steelers that drafted Joshua Dobbs 1 year and turned around, drafted Mason Rudolph the next, Now, were either guy considered, the team thinking that they had a franchise quarterback? Well,
they thought with Rudolph, they were different.
Right.
Dobbs was a backup. Rudolph, they had a first round grade according to Colbert on Rudolph, so they thought Rudolph was the heir.
And that's what I was fixing to quantify that with was Colbert's comments on that there. But this team's probably not going to win a Super Bowl again until they find that next quarterback that's going to spend at least 10 years with him.
Right. You look at the playoffs now, what team doesn't have a long-term franchise quarterback on their squad?
Of the remaining teams.
Of the remaining playoff teams. Yeah, they all do. Tannehill's a little bit shakier about, how you want to define it, but he's been a longer-term option, and it's going to be the quarterback for, a couple more years probably for them at least.
I think Tannehill's overrated. I think Tannehill and the fact that they rely too much on the running game is what's going to get Titans beat.
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's the one you can kind of question, but he's still been a longer term option and isn't, a low level quarterback. But bottom line is all the other teams left in the dance, unless I'm missing something, are all high level.
I mean, 49ers, what are 49? I mean, it's not because of the young quarterback they have. That's not why they're there.
No, you're right. I mean, it's Garoppolo, and it's been a longer-ish term option. But the point is, I mean, there's the Mahomes, the Allens, the Rodgers, the Bradys, all the elite quarterbacks are still in play.
All right. Now, what about what's going on with the Rams?
Yeah, I think Stafford still played well for them, obviously. I mean, he was a franchise quarterback in Detroit and obviously just came over to the Rams this year. But, I mean, the point is, like, the teams that are in the dance in playoffs, divisional championship rounds, they always have top tier quarterback.
All right, I think the better way for you to attack this is pedigree.
I mean, it's not really pedigree; it's about just talent and ability.
All right, well, but every quarterback remaining right now was drafted in the second round or higher, correct?
I believe so. I was Tannehill second round.
Wasn't Tannehill first round by the Dolphins or no?
Yeah, now we're both Googling. Yeah, that sounds. I know he was coming out as receiver. First he was at A&M, and then Garoppolo.
He was eighth.
Oh my God! Yeah,
Tannehill was eighth overall by the Dolphins.
Forgot about that. 2012, and then Garoppolo was second round. Right.
Garoppolo was second out of that. East.
Directional Illinois. Yeah, Eastern Illinois. Okay. Round 2. Yeah, I
had the direction right. I couldn't remember the other thing there. But on top of it, most of these guys are power.
Obviously Brady was not. He was 6th round. Everyone knows the story there. So there's your exception. But
there's your don't go in the 6th round to draft year outlier.
Your once in a lifetime exception.
Okay, so I mean, let's look at it this way. Okay, pedigree. It's got to be a pedigree guy, regardless, right? So that help. Look, there are outliers to this thing, obviously, but if you're going in looking for a quarterback now that can help you compete for a championship, either 2022 or 2023, odds are either that free agent or that drafted player is going to be a pedigree first or second round guy. True or false?
Right. True.
All right. So we have narrowed it down that far now. Congratulations to us. We took the obvious and made it a statement. How's that?
That's what we're here for, Dave. That's why people come listen to us 3 times a week.
Absolutely, they do. So, Justin, a long story short, about my draft 2 quarterbacks in every round. I'm for it. Theoretically, in the first 2 rounds. Now, in the past, I've said I think I've said draft one in the first and draft one in the 5th or something to kind of push that one. And who knows what you might get out of one or the other there. I'll leave it at this, Justin. You need a franchise guy. You need a pedigree guy. How's that? So if that's circling back to manipulate a past quote, okay. But I think the gist of what I was trying to say was you need to have, until you have the guy, you don't have the guy. And right now, it looks like the Steelers don't have the guy.
Right. I mean, I've said you're in 2 camps. Either you have a franchise quarterback or you're looking for one. And until you get into that have one camp, it's really hard to be a Super Bowl threat. You can be a competitive team, a decent team in the playoff hunt, but will you ever get over that hump? Almost certainly not, unless something just crazy happens in one playoff run.
Now, could you go the route of both this year? I think that is possible. Could you end up with a Garoppolo and a first-round draft pick on a quarterback or second-round pick on a quarterback? I think it. I mean, based on what Mike Tomlin said, yes, I don't think you can throw out that idea. Look, Tommy Maddox, he had pedigree, right? Really, he did. But
but he was a journeyman. That pedigree was kind of moot by the time he came to Pittsburgh,
right? But it fits the criteria, right?
Yeah, but I mean, he was also
We're
in
talking
town
about the most valuable
before
player
Ben
of the
came in.
XFL here, brother. You watch your mouth.
And a great insurance salesman. I'm sure a guy could sell you some insurance. Some
You
term
shut
life.
your mouth, Alex Kozora.
But Maddox, I mean, they arrived before Ben. They didn't arrive at the same time. So I don't know if it's apples to apples. Is it possible? Yes, I'd like to close doors. I think Tomlin's sentiment of all options are on the table is important, but I think it's a pretty unlikely scenario for them to get a pretty name candidate in free agency or trade and then draft a quarterback in the first round.
Let's go down this hole here real quick.
Oh, God.
All right.
Okay.
I keep contending that you're not going to throw a rookie. If you did draft one, you're not going to throw him out there week one. All right. But you said if the talent's there, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, okay, I just don't like to box myself in with those things out of the chute.
All right. But let me drill it down further for you. What if this is an underclassman that we're talking about?
The odds probably go up, and a lot of quarterbacks who come out, you're taken in the first round are probably underclassmen. But again, I don't like to say these things in black and white. I don't want to Carr this kid. I don't want to David Carr this kid. If I I don't either. But if the guy's ready to play, he's ready to play. I mean, and not playing him is just kind of silly if it's not the best thing for the team. So I just don't like to sit there and put those things in a box because each quarterback is different.
Okay, I'm just going to contend that if they do. Here's the way I'm starting to feel now that this thing might go, where I based on kind of the things that have been said. I'm not so sure they go the veteran free agent route, period, in this one. I think that they might look at maybe drafting one of these kids, throwing them in the mix with Mason and Dwayne Haskins and seeing what they get there.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth, and again, it's all unknown right now. The Steelers themselves probably don't have a great exact feel. I have kind of trended that way too, because the thought I've had, and some people have said this, and it's a good point. If you get a veteran quarterback in free agency, let's say Mariota or Bridgewater or whatever guy you want to throw out there,
you're going to pay him.
A, you're going to pay him. But B, I think more importantly, how much does it move the needle? Is he going to be better than Mason Rudolph? Yeah, I think he probably would be. But would he be significantly so? Would he be moving the needle a lot from veteran quarterback Mason to veteran quarterback Teddy or whoever? Not a ton. And so the thought may be Mason's kind of the veteran bridge guy. Haskins is kind of the dart throw. And then the rookie quarterback's kind of the hopeful heir.
The only other, look, who has more value, Garoppolo? And we apologize for this show going long. If you already hung up on a show, it's probably par for the course. But while this is a train of thought here, who will have the higher market value? And Garoppolo's still under contract, right or no?
Yes, he'll be a trade candidate this offseason.
All right. So, I mean, not only to get him, are you going to have to pay and then sign him to a deal, but you're going to have to give up draft capital unless he's cut.
Yeah, I would not trade for Garoppolo. I don't close many doors, but that's ones I've closed shut.
All right, so the odds of Garoppolo being that guy or Gardner Minshew being that guy, because you'd have to trade for him. Look, Minshew with the is worth more to the Eagles right now than he is probably any other organization because he's under contract at a low number right now.
Yeah, behind a running quarterback like Hurts, who. Yeah, I mean, that's probably a fair assessment.
Okay, so what I'm getting at here, if they're unlikely to trade for a quarterback, correct?
Right. If they do, it'd be a big swing. You're not trading. I'd be against trading him for a Minshew or Garoppolo. It'd be like Derek Carr at the minimum, Aaron Rodgers at the maximum. I'm doubtful on either of those things happening, obviously.
All right, and if it is a free agent, it would be a cheaper free agent because you still want to leave your options open to draft a guy that could potentially be the guy.
Right. Plus, there isn't a looming great quarterback that's about to hit free agency anyway. Like, who's out there that's really like a standout guy? There isn't, unless you're going to trade for him.
All right, and now I'm going to circle this thing back. I guess what I'm getting at here with all the mobility, blah blah blah. When you look at the quarterback position, affordable, not going to cost a lot of money, be able to give you that mobility aspect, be a mentor to maybe the next guy, somebody you wouldn't be afraid of pulling the carpet out from 3 games into the season. Who are you looking at here?
Who am I looking at?
Who's the guy? There's only one guy.
There is? Is this a rhetorical thing? I mean, I've talked about Sam Howell. I mean, Kenny Pickett, obviously, he's going to be the
No, I'm talking
biggest...
about free agent.
Oh, in free agency. Like Mariota?
Yeah, that's the guy.
Okay. Yeah.
That has to be the guy, period.
Yeah, the only thing with him is he really hasn't played a lot of football the last 2 years. He's run the ball more than he's thrown the football. But yeah, in terms of like a cheap pedigree option that can move, Mariota checks all those boxes.
You know, I can really envision and look, we knew this was going to be a process that we probably go through with this position based on what things have been said and all like that. I can now envision Kevin Colbert emerging from the dumpster, holding up Marcus Mariota like some sort of what's the Lion King over the cliff,
Simba, like Simba,
presenting this as his as his find,
There's a reference I didn't think you were going to make, but okay.
I mean, am I wrong?
No, I get that. Yeah, I mean, I think Mariota fits a lot of those things for sure.
Name other than maybe a Bridgewater, I guess. Who would you rather have, Bridgewater or Mariota?
Bridgewater's going to cost more,
right?
I don't know. I mean, Bridgewater's probably the better quarterback, but there's a financial aspect to it. I mean, yeah, it's the names we mentioned: Brissett, Tyrod Taylor.
Brissett's not as mobile as what he used to be either.
No, it's a little bit of mobility, but more about the relationship between Canada and Brissett because they work together at NC State. That's kind of why I mentioned that, and people get mad at me for it. Yeah, I get Mariota. I mean, it makes sense. I understand that where you're coming from.
All right. It took a few weeks to get to that, but I think that's where I'm at in this thing right now. You're at like Mariota, and failing that, then just draft somebody. They're not going to really go out to any other. No, I think they could do. I think you do both. I've come to the. I've come about now that I think you could potentially see them do both if there is a guy. Now, here's the other question here, real quick. How do you feel about quarterbacks under 6'2"?
I don't care about the height too much. I just care about the play. I think if you start putting limitations on guys out of the chute, you miss on a lot of talent.
How tall is Kenny Pickett?
You said he's 6'0",
I didn't say. I said.
Who said? Someone said that.
I said they're saying that they say.
Well, we'll find out in Mobile in about 2 weeks, so we'll get our answer then. But I don't know how tall he is then.
NFL Draft Scout, draftscout.com, which does a pretty good job on it. They have him as 6'0",
6'0", Like I said, we'll get our answer. We'll be at the Senior Bowl. They measure. We'll find out.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, I think it's everything. Yeah, sorry for the super long show. That's my bad. I spent a lot of time on Matt Canada, like a half hour on him to kick things off. But we'll be back Friday and answer more reader emails on Friday.
All right, follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Like what we do, want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free version as well, too. Hopefully we entertained you. Please read the site. Got a lot of pre-draft stuff in motion now as well, too. A lot of free agency, salary cap stuff coming up. We'll be talking about more interviews today. Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins. Who else talked today? Dan Moore. Yeah. And also we'll have all these recapped here shortly on SteelersDepot.com. Good job, Alex. I apologize for helping you run this show long today. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.